So, seeing how this is only the second video that I'm posting on this channel, most of y'all probably don't know me, so hi, my name's Zach. I'm going to keep the intro nice, short, and sweet. I like to talk about football, so with the NFL season kicking off on Thursday, I decided to go into the closet under the stair, break out the old crystal ball, and this is what I see happening. So how I decided to do this is I'm just going to go in reverse order in each conference, starting off with who I think is going to be the 16 seed, going all the way up to the 1 seed for each conference. So kicking things off with the AFC because I'm a fan of AFC team. Just going to start there. We got the Houston Texans. Yeah, once again, I think they're going to be the worst team in the American Football Conference. Last year, they finished with a 3-13-1 record, barely missing out on the number 1 overall pick because Lovie Smith is a Chicago Bear at heart. And this year, I think they're going to show improvement, creeping up to 5-12, but still that keeps them as the cellar dwellers in the AFC. However, I do think that they're on the right track. Much of that is because they got franchise legend DeMeco Ryans to be their head coach and de facto defensive coordinator. In San Francisco, Ryans was able to lead one of the best units, taking over from where Saleh left off and not missing a beat, arguably making the defense even better. And now coming into Houston, I think he's going to be able to establish that culture and really get some of these young guys going, like Will Anderson, Derek Stingley. Those are 2 of the best prospects we've seen come out recently, and now they got some amazing coaching to help him out. The biggest weakness I see on this roster is their wide receivers. Yeah, Nico Collins has some hype. Tank Dell, Robert Woods, I think is still kind of underrated. Like Tennessee, he was a mess, but I think he can still be at least like a solid guy. However, it's just not a lot of help, especially when you have a number 2 overall pick at quarterback. You want to be able to surround him and really ensure that he has the best environment to succeed in. And right now, I don't know if Houston's doing that. I'd say that they were doing that with their offensive line. I thought that this had a chance to sneakily be one of the best units in the league, like top 10, maybe even top 5. But with rookie Juice Scruggs and second-year first-round pick Kenyon Green already on IR, it's just not looking like the best for them. And with the weakness that I see at wide receiver, I have the biggest wild card of the season being CJ Stroud. Is he going to be able to overcome what is a unarguably poor supporting cast right now and elevate the team, prove that he is one of these guys? Or as a rookie, that's going to be extremely hard to do. So what's more likely is he's going to struggle, and that's why I have them coming out to a 5-12 record. But if one person on this team or one unit on this team is going to flip that narrative, it's going to be CJ Stroud. He's got all the talent to succeed. It's just how fast are we going to see that? As the 15 seed for the AFC, I have the Denver Broncos. Last year finishing with a disappointing record of 5-12, and sadly, I don't see it getting much better for the squad, only going 6-11 in my prediction. They brought in quarterback Russell Wilson to be the savior of this franchise, hopefully, and that just didn't pan out, having his worst season ever and just looking like a shell of himself. However, the Broncos did bring in Sean Payton, who I've listed as their biggest strength, the offensive genius coach of New Orleans for the longest time, but we'll have to see if he's able to work his magic once again on a undersized quarterback. I think he definitely has the possibility to, but with so much talent and other more established, solid teams, I just couldn't give too much benefit of the doubt to Sean Payton, who, let's be honest, he hasn't won a ring since that, 2009 season. And while they always had a good offense, or not even always had a good offense, they always had Drew Brees carrying the load. Let's see if he can work some of that magic again here in Denver, or if this is just going to be another disappointing season for them. Especially because I'm not really loving their defense, especially their defensive line. I have them as a tier 4 defensive interior and a tier 5 edge rushing room. They lost Bradley Chubb. Traded him away, but that's still going to hurt them. They lost Shelby Harris a year ago too, and that's very underrated. He was one of the best three tech pass rushers from the interior, and they really haven't done much to replace him. They got Zach Allen. He was really solid for the Cardinals, so we'll see if he's able to help out in the middle there. But overall, I think this defensive line is going to not be able to generate the pressure needed to help out this cornerback room, which I do think is very solid, led by Pat Surtain. But if you can't get pressure on the opposing quarterbacks, then just going to have all day to throw it back there and be able to pick you apart. And with this offense really disappointing last year, obviously should be a bit better with Sean Payton in it, but we have to see what Russell Wilson does as my X Factor, biggest wild card player. If this offense is able to be decent, then they can maybe overcome some of those deficiencies on the defensive line and the defense overall. But that really just depends on Russ looking like himself again. And until we see that, I can't just say it's going to happen. I think it's definitely still possible. Like, I have him in tier 3, which is up to quarterback 16. I think he can still be a top half of the league starter, a franchise guy. That's my tier 3 for the franchise quarterback, right? I think he still definitely has that in him. I'm not willing to drop him lower than that because we just have seen him be a Hall of Famer for so long. And with Sean Payton, I think that they can get maybe not all the way back to prime Russ, but to like, I don't know, like at least like 75 to 80% of that. And if they can do that, then they're going to make this 6-11 record prediction look silly. But until they can show that and prove that to me, I just, this team hasn't made this playoff since winning the Super Bowl in 2015. So I'm not ready to just crown them as all of a sudden being better like I did last year. I thought that they were going to be a good team, and they disappointed. I'm not going to let them bite me in the butt again. Maybe they'll bite me in the butt the other way, though, so we'll see. And as my 14 seed, I have the Las Vegas Raiders. Them finishing with the same 6-11 record that they had in the season before. And while they definitely did have some roster turnover this year, I just don't think that it was enough to really make an impact. I think this is still going to be a team that can win any week, but will just give you the most heartbreaking, disappointing losses. If you can't tell, I'm a Raiders fan. This team has scarred me over and over again, and still haven't seen them win a playoff game since, I was 1 year old, so I've never seen them win a playoff game. But this team does have its strengths, most notably at wide receiver. It's a bit of an odd group with Devontae Adams obviously being the alpha and number one outside ball winner. He can also play from the slot, but with the other two guys being Jacoby Myers and Hunter Renfrow, that's a lot of slot options, and we're going to see how they all want to work it out too, especially because they spent a third-round pick on Trey Tucker, a speedy 5'9" receiver who might be best lined up in the slot. Like, who knows, maybe they'll still play him out wide, but it's a very interesting group, but a strength nonetheless. However, on the opposite side, the guys covering the corners, or the guys covering the wide receivers, I do not trust them to hold up at all right now. You got Marcus Peters towards the end of his career, a rookie 4th-round pick in Jacorian Bennett. You have a couple safeties who are like fine players in Trayvon Morgan, Marcus Epps, but nothing special. And that's really just the entire defense outside of Max Crosby, who was obviously in competition to be the biggest strength, at least like edge rush in general, because if Chandler Jones can get back to form, Tyree Wilson, number 7 overall pick, they have some players there, but overall this defense is just very mid, and when you don't really have that thing that brings you over the top as a mid defense, you're just going to get picked apart, especially in the AFC and the AFC West, having to play Patrick Mahomes twice a year. I put the biggest wild card for the Raiders as Jimmy Garoppolo, not because we don't really know what we're going to get from him. We know what we're going to get. A solid quarterback who's going to make you believe in him until he throws the ball straight to the linebacker or jukes his ACL out of his leg. And the reason why he's the wild card is because of that second thing, the injury. When is it going to hit? Is it going to be season ending? Like, if Jimmy can be healthy, he's shown that he can produce in Josh McDaniels' offense, and this offense could be a top 10 unit with the best, arguably the best wide receiver and running back. Underrated offensive line, still mid, like somewhere in that like 16 to 20 range, but like not as terrible as it really gets talked about, at least at the beginning of last year. And if Jimmy Garoppolo can just be the mid-tier quarterback that he's been, this could be a good offense. But with his injury questions, you have to bank it on him missing at least some games. And Brian Hoyer coming in, not excited about that. Maybe Aiden O'Connell can actually be decent. Like, he looked really good in the preseason, but like, man, this is preseason. He's a 4th-round pick. Like, I'm not putting a lot of stock into it, so that's why I have the Raiders finishing with another disappointing season. At 13, I have the Indianapolis Colts. They had a really disappointing season last year, going 4-12-1 after signing Matt Ryan, and it's like the entire team just freaking fell apart, man. Especially that offensive line. Matt Ryan looked like he couldn't throw a ball anymore, and just, I mean, they fired Frank Reich halfway through the season and then signed an ESPN analyst. Like, what what did you expect from this team? Like, it was a mess, but I do see it going a tiny bit up, finishing 6-11 this season. And a lot of that is because I do expect this offensive line to have a big bounce back year. Like all the pieces that we said last year makes this offensive line good, they're still there. I still believe in Quentin Nelson. Like, he's going to bounce back. That was a really weird year for him that I think some injuries were definitely bothering him and just like a down year in player overall. However, he's still shown that he's been one of the best guards in the league and can definitely regain that form. Rookie Bernard Ryman, he was coming into form definitely at the end of the year. Like, at the beginning, he looked bad, but as time went on, he looked a lot better. Ryan Kelly has been that league average starter his entire career. He should hopefully get back to that. Braden Smith has been a really underrated right tackle, like pretty close to top 10, I'd say, throughout his career. And like, just once again, just a random down year last year. The question mark is Will Fries, a former 7th round pick. He hasn't looked good, but when you only got one question mark and it's at guard, it's not as bad. You can like hide that a lot better. However, the secondary, I do not think that you will be able to hide unless they're depending a lot on some young guys. So maybe they can surprise us. Juju Brent's 2nd round pick is starting for them. Dallas Flowers guy started getting some action last year after, I believe he was a undrafted free agent last year. Yeah, and he was showing up, but when you're relying on a rookie and a undrafted guy from last year and then a couple other rookies and late drafted guys across the board, the only solid established guy is Kenny Moore. What you're going to get from him. And even he had a down year last year, but he's still he's shown that he can be a top 10 slot corner. Arguably, he was the best slot corner about 2 years ago. Julian Blackman has been a solid free safety. Kind of weird, the free safety situation over the past couple of years, because I feel like Malik Hooker was also the same, just pretty solid, and then they just replaced him with another pretty solid guy. However, Rodney Thomas really surprised last year. He was showing some promise as a 7th round pick, so maybe you can definitely see the theoretical upside with this secondary, but just looking at this roster, it's actually a pretty solid roster overall, but that is just the glaring weakness, and the only reason why they aren't ranked higher, other than the secondary, though, is quarterback. Like, we just don't know what we're going to get out of Anthony Richardson. And as a rookie who, he's not as raw as everyone's saying. Like, he's a good processor. He knows how to get the ball to where he wants to get it. He wants to be a throw-first quarterback. He's not one of these first read and run type of guys, but he's not the most accurate guy. Not the, just not a lot of experience. And when you're going from not a lot of experience to the NFL, look at Trey Lance. I'm not saying it's not going to work out. I'm very high on Anthony Richardson. I think he can be a very, very good NFL quarterback. But until he proves it, I can't take him out of the bottom tier of quarterback and to expect him to come in year one and be an amazing quarterback and lead a team that wildly disappointed last year to a much better season. No, I think we're going to see something everyone's comparing him to Jalen Hurts, and rightfully so, bringing over Shane Steichen, who helped Jalen Hurts adapt to the NFL from college. I think we're going to see a very similar thing here in Indianapolis, and it might take a couple of years. It might not look amazing year one, but be patient, let it ride out, and who knows, maybe he can surprise sooner rather than later and make this 6-11 record prediction look bad. But as for now, I think temper your expectations. Be ready for kind of a weird year, but a fun year nonetheless. At number 12, this is where I decided to slot in the Cleveland Browns, and very, very conflicted. This is one of the first teams where I'm like, man, they could make me look like absolute idiots, because this roster is absolutely nasty. But I feel like we've been saying that every year, and really only 1 year the Browns produced on that. So I got to give them the opposite of the benefit of the doubt. they're the Browns. I can't until they can prove to me that this is gonna work, that this Deshaun Watson debacle is gonna pay off. I'm gonna be a little bit skeptical. I have them finishing once again 7-10, just like they did last year. But as I said, this roster is loaded. Edge rushers, they got one of the best rooms in the entire league. I have them ranked 4th overall in my tier 1. And like Myles Garrett is arguably the best pass rusher. I think he probably will get the crown this year because he finally has some help along not only edge, but interior defensive line is a lot more improved. We'll talk on them a little later. But they brought in Zadarius Smith, who has some health questions and is not a contributor really at all against the run. But like, who cares? Rush the passer, And if he can stay healthy, that's gonna be one of the best duos in the league, bar none. They also brought in Ogbonnia, tough name, from the Houston Texans, and he's really shown to be like, since his time with the Rams, a solid like 3rd edge rusher and someone who's like, dude, what if we made him the number 2? Like, would he be better? And I thought we were going to see that here until suddenly they brought in Zadarius Smith and just made it even freaking better. But yeah, like this should be one of the best edge rushers in the league, and I think like people haven't been talking. I mean, people talk a lot about Myles Garrett, but he's never been like 100% yes, this is the guy. This could definitely be the year where he establishes himself as like the best in the league. Moving on to their biggest weakness, though, I have the interior of this defensive line, which is more based off of precedent and really the rest of this roster just not having weaknesses other than arguably quarterback. But as you can see, we're going to talk about that next. This roster is just so loaded. Like, interior defensive line has been their weakness forever. It feels like they've just been getting gashed like crazy. Myles Garrett getting no help from the inside. So what do? They bring in Dalvin Tomlinson from the Vikings and Shelby Harris from the Seahawks, formerly with the Broncos. 2 guys who, like, yeah, they aren't going to be top 10 guys. Maybe some of you guys might have not even heard of him, depending on how familiar you are with interior defensive linemen, but they're going to make this possibly like the best defensive line in the league. And that's really weird for me to say about their weakness, but like, yeah, we have to see it work out. But I really don't see any reason why this interior defensive line shouldn't be much improved. It's just, out of every other position group, I thought at least like relative, like linebacker, like I think is a bit weaker, but linebacker isn't going to make or break the season the same way an interior defensive line weakness could. So I guess the biggest potential weakness that will affect their season is the interior defensive line for me, and I would not be surprised if we actually saw it as a strength by the end of the year. However, they aren't my biggest wild card because this is the team that gave Mr. Deshaun Watson $250 million guaranteed after he sat out a year due to some questionable behavior, which I'm not going to get into. This is a football video. I'm going to try to keep it as much to that as possible. Opinions on him out the window. Last time we saw him play a full season, he was incredible. He was arguably MVP worthy on a 4-12 team. Like, you can't give the MVP to the quarterback of a 4-12 team. You got to win some games, but man, he was electric in 2020, and that was after they traded away DeAndre Hopkins. Like this, he has top quarterback potential in him, but what we saw last year just wasn't it. He's learning a new system here with Stefanski, so that could definitely be part of it. The rust knocking off the tire. But just like I had with Russ, I'm not ranking him below a franchise guy yet because we've seen it in him. And it's even different than with Russ because he's still young. He shouldn't lose a step physically. He should still have all the talent in the world. And if the Browns are able to get even like 85% of 2020 Deshaun Watson, man, this is going to be a really good team. Like, the rest of their division is loaded, so it's hard. Like, I wanted to give them more than 7 wins, but when you're playing, when you have to play the entire AFC North twice, plus you have to play the NFC West, which like I do expect them to win more of those games than not, but it still is like, okay, like the Niners are good, the Rams, Cardinals, no, but Seahawks, definitely a good team. It's hard to give this team too many more wins, but like not knowing, not assuming that Deshaun Watson is going to be back to being that guy. But if we do see him back to being Deshaun Watson, man, this is going to be one of the best teams in the league. And weird to say about the Browns, but watch out. So then as my 11 seed, I have the New England Patriots, and I realized that as I was making these, a lot of my record predictions ended up just being like the same or similar records to the year before. And I promise, I did this like, I spent days coming up with ranking each position, coming up with like a formula to like, oh, like this is like the average amount of wins they're going to get, you know, like using like decimal points. Oh, I think they're going to win this game like 65% of the time. And then also I did just went on like one of those like NFL prediction makers or whatever and like selected them, took like the average of that, shot out whatever number I got. And a lot of the times it just ended up, I don't see these teams moving, I guess, too much because like, where are the Patriots supposed to go? The Jets got better. The Dolphins got better. Maybe the Bills got better. I don't know. It's hard to be better than what the Bills were last year. So, like, this is a good team. But, man, they can't really do much better than 8-9. Like, it's just the reality of the situation of the NFL that we're in is it doesn't matter if you have all this talent. You're just, when there's even more talent around you, you got to, I don't know, you got to find some way to win outside of what the Patriots have been able to do in the past. And right now, they aren't the best team, and they're the worst team, I think, in the AFC East, but it's really just an unfortunate situation for them. Their biggest strength, I mean, freaking Bill Belichick, like, yeah, I think he's lost a step as an overall head coach, like the last year debacle of having Matt Patricia as your offensive coordinator. He's made some questionable GM moves, but as a defensive coach, he's still Bill Belichick, man. Like, this is going to be a top 10, top 5 defense. You got Christian Gonzalez, who is just like, how did he fall to them at 17? I believe in Kevin White, too. Like, they got some young pieces. Christian Barmore up the middle, too. Like, really should be having a breakout sooner rather than later. This is like, what else do I need to say about a Belichick defense? Maybe even if they don't have, like, I was naming off some impressive names, but, like, they lost someone like Devin McCourty, and that's definitely going to hurt them. But overall, like, this is just one of the best coached defenses year in, year out, and I don't expect anything different. They should be able to keep them in games more often than not. However, this offense could have a problem with their wide receivers being in the tier 5 out of 5 tiers. I see some upside with this group, like Juju, he's a solid slot player. Devonta Parker has been a solid outside receiver, you know, like it's just a bunch of solid, like good players. But when there's so much talent around the league, how I named my tier 5 in my spreadsheet that I have was actually pretty deep, just no alpha. Like, I already named their top 2 guys. They got Tyquan Thornton, the speed threat, who's not having the best of camp, so maybe he won't contribute as much as he could as a former second-round pick. Kendrick Bourne, he's always just been, like, once again, one of these solid guys. Like, I'd want him on my team, but, like, how many snaps is he going to get? Like, I'd want him as, like, my wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4, which is what he is, but I'd also want Juju as my wide receiver 3, 4. I'd want Devontae Parker. They have some serious upside with Kayshon Boutte and Demario Douglas, a couple of rookie 6th-round picks. They could make some noise. They could surprise us. I don't know if they will because, like, their rookie 6th-round pick, sometimes this stuff, as we're seeing with Romeo Doubs, comes a year later when you get the hype. But, yeah, unless these young guys have some unexpected breakthroughs, I do think I do think that this wide receiver core could hold this team back. And then the biggest wild card I have on this team is Mac Jones. As you're going to notice the pattern with this, a lot of the times, the biggest wild card is going to be the quarterback. Like, how is he going to play in the system? Like, maybe it's not just him individually. It's definitely not in this case, because he looked phenomenal as a rookie with Josh McDaniels as the offensive coordinator, and then looked like a complete pumpkin out there with, say his name, Matt Patricia. Like, but everyone knows that was a bad play calling. Everyone knows, like, that, like, was going to be a bad idea. So let's see him with a real offensive coordinator, which, like, say what you want about Bill O'Brien, the GM, or, like, how his relationship with DeAndre Hopkins fell apart and all that stuff. Like, he knew how to call an offense. And he went back to Alabama, spent a couple years there, helped call one of the better offenses in the nation. They're obviously like it's freaking Alabama. And now he gets to reconnect with Bill Belichick and the New England Patriots. Like this should be a much better offense. And I think Mac Jones can break out of this tier 4 quarterback, which I have him in right now, which is my mid-tier guy. Someone who's like, yeah, you can win with him, but like, do you really want to pay him? I think he can really establish himself as one of these like low end franchise guys, like a tier 3 guy, kind of like I still have 2 of there. I have Jared Goff in my tier 3. Like these are really solid quarterbacks who I think could be worth being paid as long as it's not like top tier money, but like you can build around him if you pay him like 35-40 million a year. I think, especially with like the way the cap structure keeps going higher and higher, like that number's not going to look like too much in a few years. I think Mac Jones can really prove that he's one of these guys this year, and whether or not that's someone who you want as your quarterback for like the next 10 years is a question, because like we see those guys eventually get moved on from kind of often because like there's just everyone wants that upside. But for now, like yeah, like you're gonna have to kind of wait out Aaron Rodgers. He's only gonna be there for like a year or 2 more, and then who knows what's gonna happen with the Bills and Dolphins, how long they're gonna be dominant for. But like in a year or 2, I think they can really make a push with Mac Jones if he can establish himself as this tier 3 guy. But once again, let's see it, because that's not what he was last year. And then as my 10 seed, I have the Los Angeles Chargers, which is probably going to piss off a lot of people. They finished 10-7 last year. I have them going 9-8 this year. And like, I understand if you think they're going to be a better team than this. They have a ton of potential. Like Justin Herbert, man, is so freaking good. I drafted him in my fantasy this year. Like even as a Raiders fan, like this is going to be one of the best offenses. I have their overall offense as number 4 in the league, a tier 1 offense. And so you might be saying like, why are they missing the playoffs? Well, I guess we're going to get into that. But first, I just want to talk about a bit more Justin Herbert. I have him as a tier 2 quarterback, but man, by the end of the year, I can definitely see him entering that tier 1, especially with Kellen Moore here calling plays for him. Like, you saw what Kellen Moore was able to do with Dak Prescott, who is one of these, like, tier 3, like, fine quarterbacks, maybe a bit overpaid, maybe a bit overhyped, definitely by Cowboy fans, but, like, a good guy, like, you know, Justin Herbert isn't that. Justin Herbert is superstar, elite, generational, any word you want to throw that way. That is how to describe Justin Herbert. And he's just been held back by his coaching his entire career. Like at Oregon, we were like, man, like, I mean, like I was on train with everyone saying like he looks like he's going to be a bust, because that's what he looked like at Oregon. He gets to the NFL, starts getting like half decent coaching, and looks freaking phenomenal right away. So what if you take that from half-decent coaching to some of the best offensive coaching we've seen over the past couple of years from one of the best young minds? I think Justin Herbert could really explode this year, and if someone is going to make this prediction look ridiculous, it's going to be him having an MVP type of season. However, on defense, they still have a glaring weakness in run defense, specifically stemming from that interior defensive line. I have it as tier 4 units, which is like, I have it labeled solid, but doesn't blow you away. And that's really just how I feel about that group. Sebastian Joseph Day, solid run defender, not much pass, doesn't blow you away. Morgan Fox, kind of the opposite, solid pass rusher, nothing against the run, really, the way he's deployed, but like that's another story. Austin Jackson, solid run defender. Like they just got all these guys who I'm like, yeah, like they're fine, but as a Super Bowl competing roster going against the AFC, which like this defense is built to stop these high flying passing attacks, but you still got the Browns, who we already talked about. They're going to be a ground and pound team, even though they're even though I think their passing attack could be really good if Deshaun Watson comes back. They have one of the best offensive lines and a top 3 runner of the football in Nick Chubb. And you got the Ravens in this division, which like we'll have to see how they look, or in this conference, which we'll have to see how they look with the new offensive coordinator, but they still should be a great ground team. Got the Tennessee Titans. Like there's just so many teams that can take advantage of your weakness on the ground, so that it doesn't even matter if you can stop the run, if you can stop the pass. If you run into one of these ground teams, they're just going to stop you before you can even get there. The biggest wild card on this season is wide receiver health for me. They just got a bunch of injury-prone guys up there at the top, like Keenan Allen, Michael Davis, or what? Not Michael Davis. Keenan Allen, Mike Williams. They should be one of the best duos in the league, like an elite duo, but you just can't bank on them being in there for the whole season. You got Quentin Johnston. They picked in the first round this year out of TCU. He should bring that element of speed to this room. However, he's not even projected to be one of the starters here. Joshua Palmer snagged that third spot, who's shown some promise as like a deep threat throughout the years. Jalen Guyton, he's their other speed guy on the team. Like, they have, I don't hate the depth here, but when you're going for a Super Bowl in this loaded AFC conference, like, I have them finishing 9-8 as the 10 seed. 9-8 would get you in the playoffs in the NFC. You know what I'm saying? Like, this, the margin of difference between all these AFC teams is so incredibly thin that if you have a little weakness like that, like Keenan Allen, Mike Williams missed too many games, like, you just aren't going to be able to keep up. And with that, plus the Chargers just charging, like, there's no better way to say, you know what I mean? They're going to blow some leads that they shouldn't. They're going to have some disappointing games, like, until they can shake that monkey off their back, like, just like the Browns, just like the Broncos, how I was saying with Russell Wilson, like, until they can show me that this isn't who they are, this is all they've shown me who they are, so I'm ready for them to kind of disappoint once again. Sadly, like, it would be awesome to see Justin Herbert go in, win a couple playoff games. He has that talent, and I think he will get there one day, but in this loaded conference, this just doesn't feel like their year. So at the 9 seed for the AFC, I have the Tennessee Titans. I have them improving on their record from last year, 7-10, going up to 9-8. But just like with the Chargers, like, 9 wins isn't going to do it in the AFC. And while there's so much about this team that I love, it's just you can't, or I can't say you can't. Like, obviously some of you all believe that this is going to be one of the powerhouses in the conference. Maybe not a powerhouse, but like at least like a division winner. As with so many other teams that have more established strengths, especially like in passing, like this passing team could be pretty bad. Like, it's just hard to see a run-first, defensive-minded team really be that powerhouse, especially in the AFC when there's so many good passing offenses that are just going to outpace the Titans. Like, the Titans want to play it slow, play good defense, and that works. Like, they almost beat Patrick Mahomes with Malik Willis out there looking absolutely terrible. Like, it's possible to do it, but in an AFC that just has so many other good teams, I think they're just going to just fall short. Like, one more win, they're in the playoffs sort of thing, And a lot of the optimism for this team, I think, comes from their head coach, Mike Vrabel. He's fully, in my opinion, established himself as one of these guys that you want to play for. One of these guys that's going to elevate the content of their team. They've been one of the most injury-ravaged team for the past couple of years, and they still make playoff pushes. They still almost made the playoffs last year, despite having to teach Joshua Dobbs the playbook right before playing the Jacksonville Jaguars, who a lot of people are super high on this year because of their good passing attack, their superstar quarterback, Trevor Lawrence, and all this other talent on the Jag. The Titans almost beat them. Like, I don't know. I feel like people are really sleeping on what this team could be. People think that they're going to be like one of the worst teams. They want to see Tannehill yanked for either Willis or Levis, whoever ends up being the two there. But don't be surprised to see this team competing for a playoff spot in Week 18. Like, this is, Mike Vrabel just somehow knows how to get the best out of his guys no matter what. However, I can't say all of his guys because that offensive line last year was just atrocious. I only have 4 tiers for offensive line. Like, I'm not going to pretend like I'm some offensive line guru who can tell you exactly why someone's great or someone's bad, but I know the Titans were bad last year, and they made some improvements. They brought in Andre Dillard, who was a promising first-round pick, but got beat out by Jordan Mailata in Philadelphia, which, like, you can't even really blame him. He's one of the best left tackles in the league, So we'll have to see if Dillard can be... I think he can be average. I can't just say he will be because we haven't seen him play in a while, but he can definitely be average. They drafted Skoronski, 11-12 overall this year, something like that. He should be a really solid guard for them, but overall, like, there's just a lot of question marks on this offensive line, and they tried to address it. They're bringing, a whole new unit, but that's another concerning thing. Like, even though they're theoretically upgrading at every position, at least replacing every position. Like, this is a whole new group working together, and when you do that, you're just going to see some struggle along the offensive line. Like, some of the best, or some of the reasons why offensive lines are so good is they're familiar playing with each other. They know how to pass off protections to each other, and when you're bringing in a bunch of new guys, don't expect it to be good Titans fans. I mean, I don't think you guys are, but yeah. And then the biggest wild card with this team I have as their wide receivers. I think they can be a really good unit. My tier 4 for wide receiver is labeled as high potential, but let's see it first. Yeah, and I have them as the top team in that tier at 22nd in the league. DeAndre Hopkins, he's not who he used to be, but that doesn't mean he's not still a phenomenal receiver. He's going to be their go-to guy. I expect him to break 1,000 yards, double-digit touchdowns. Like, he's going to be not prime DeAndre Hopkins, but pretty close to it. Like, I think like 80% of it. And then you got Treylon Burks, who is the super high upside guy. He can be your A.J. Brown replacement. Like, obviously, that's what he was drafted to do. He was picked with the pick that Titans traded to get A.J. Brown. We'll have to see if it works out for them, but there's nothing saying he can't be great. He just hasn't been great yet. So once again, like, high potential. Let's see it first. And then this rest of this room is just like solid. Nick Westbrook-Akina, Chris Moore, Racey McMath, I think are all just like kind of how I was talking about with the Patriots guys. Like, yeah, guys who you want as your like 3 to 4 type guy. Like, you don't want to see him getting a ton of targets, but to have him on your team is never a bad thing. Kyle Phillips is someone, though, who can really break out in the slot. He was kind of like last year's Hunter Renfrow. He just got an injury, I want to say week 1, maybe week 2, and just couldn't really get on track after that. But he had a good camp, according to Titans, you know. So we'll have to see if he does end up producing on this team. But yeah, like this, if this wide receiver room can elevate the passing offense, we all know about this rushing offense with Derrick Henry, and defensively they're going to be solid, led by Mike Vrabel. They could sneak out another win or two, and somehow we could be sitting there in December like, how the hell are the Titans the 1 seed, just like we were a few years ago? There's no reason why they can't do that. It just, as I've been saying with these AFC teams, oh my God, it's just so loaded. I'm so excited to watch this year. But yeah, it kind of sucks being one of these mid-level AFC fans because you might just get overshadowed by everyone else. And then as my 8th seed, I have the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I know I've said this multiple times. This one really scares me with how low I am ranking them. Like, having them miss the playoffs just feels wrong, but I didn't know who to take out, who I have making the playoffs, you know? Like, this team obviously is going to finish 9-8 or better. Like, it's Mike Tomlin. He hasn't had a losing record. That's what I have obviously listed here as their biggest strength. The Steelers just know how to play ball. Like, they're going to be competitive no matter who's out there on the field. They're going to be able to win or lose any game. I think that's the scary part of them, is that they can lose any game. I mean, they aren't going to, because they're going to get, they're going to at least get to like a 9-8. But yeah, like, Mike Tomlin has that incredible record of just never having the losing season, getting the most out of his guys, and really headed by this great defense. TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith, rushing the passer. Like, I have them as the number 2 duo in the league. They almost were what I put as their biggest strength, because, like, man, just having that is incredible. And Nick Herbig really breaking out in the preseason, looking like an absolute steal of a 4th-round pick. This defense is going to be, I have them ranked as the number 1 defense in the whole league. Like, they have a tier 1 interior defensive line, the number 1 overall defensive line, in my opinion. Tier 1 edge rushing room, tier 1 safety room. Their linebackers are tier 5, but, like, as I said, it's linebackers. That's not going to make or break your season. And then their corners, nickels, I have them as the tier 3, which is like, you want to see it higher, but with the rest of this team being so damn good, man, I'm so excited to watch this defense. And really, it's just offensively what's giving me pause. Matt Canada just did not look like a competent offensive coordinator out there. Like, you see the pieces. The offensive line was better than you expected. Najee was a lot worse than expected, so maybe there's that too. Kenny Pickett came in and looked really solid right away. I mean, like, his numbers weren't the best, but, like, if you actually watched him play, you were like, yeah, this looks like a good quarterback who's just having balls, like Hail Marys intercepted or balls bounce off of his wide receiver's hands and stuff like that. I guess Kenny Pickett wasn't allowed to make audibles at the line of scrimmage last year, which like this year they're giving him the ability to do. So maybe it was just like, okay, we don't want to overwhelm our young quarterback. That's why Canada's offense was so vanilla, so boring, so just inside zone and sticks, slant flats, like stuff that you'd be calling if you just started playing Madden. Maybe that's why, because they didn't want to overwhelm their rookie. And if that's the case, like, I mean, Kenny Pickett's my biggest wild card on this team for a reason. I have him as a tier 4 quarterback right now because he didn't show anything more than being like a mid-level guy. But man, he was so good this preseason. Like, I don't want to overrate preseason, but like, I could see him being like a tier 2 quarterback by the end of the year if he keeps playing like that, especially with these receivers he's going to, and Deontay Johnson, George Pickens, I loved him coming out. I thought he should have been a first round pick. I really wanted him to go to Tampa Bay, learn under Mike Evans. I thought they were very similar players and it would really benefit Pickens there. But like, honestly, the Steelers is probably an even better location. And they got Allen Robinson now too, which like people I feel like aren't talking about enough. Yeah, he really disappointed last year for the Rams, but he's coming in with different expectations. I think he's coming in with a bit of a chip on his shoulder, and he's the third guy on this team and could really produce with that expectations and roles. I'm going to be honest, I don't think that there is a ceiling on this team. Like, they could be the best team in the league, but just like I've said with everyone below them, I mean, seemingly everyone below them, let's go out and see it. I want to see it. I would love to see the Steelers do good this season. They have so much young promise on them, but I mean, if they had a good offensive coordinator, I'd probably think this is a playoff team and maybe even winning their division, which is an incredibly hard thing to do nowadays. But, you know, like the Steelers team could be really good. And sadly, right now, I see them as just short of being a playoff team. So then as the 7th seed, the first wild card in the AFC, or I guess last wild card just sneaking in there, I have the Miami Dolphins finishing 11-6 after going 9-8 last year. Their biggest strength is Mike McDaniel. I already have him as a tier 1 coach. I think he's one of the best in the league. He really knows how to relate to his players. It seems everyone loves him in the locker room. But not only that, he's an offensive genius. Like, he's showing to be one of these Shanahan disciples who just picked up on everything and expanded on it himself too. If you haven't listened to the play callers on The Athletic, it was a phenomenal 5-part series, I forgot, podcast series where Jordan Rodriguez interviewed a bunch of these Shanahan coaches, including Mike McDaniel, and he started off as the run game coordinator or just something along those lines back in Washington and worked his way up, proved that he knows how to generate and create offense, and he really showed that last year. And yeah, people are saying, oh, at the end of the year they were slowing down. A lot of people point to that Chargers game where press man really neutralized this offense, and I can't come out and tell you they're going to solve it like with 100% confidence, like, oh yeah, and tell you like this is what they're going to do, because I just don't know. But from everything I've seen from Mike McDaniel, he's going to figure out a way. And with all the talent on this team, like, you give one of the best wide receivers. I believe them as the best wide receiver duo in the league, to one of the best offensive minds, with a quarterback who really knows what he's doing, can get the ball. Like, say what you want about Tua, he was operating that offense at top tier before he just got, hit in the head a couple too many times, or I guess a back injury, whatever. Like, I hope he's okay. Like, that's obviously one of the biggest wild cards on the season. But before we get into that, I want to talk about this offensive line, which I have as their biggest weakness as a tier 4 offensive line. As I said, I only have 4 tiers because I think it's tough for me as a not offensive line expert to truly differentiate these, but they're in the concerning tier for me. Liam Eichenberg is projected to start again. He hasn't been any good since he's started, since he's been drafted in the 2nd round out of Notre Dame. Same with Austin Jackson at right tackle, 1st round pick, who just hasn't been good. Teron Armstead is a superstar, but he's one of these guys who you just have to mark up for health now. Like, he's going to play 11 games, so hopefully it's the later 11 games. Connor Williams, I think, is actually a really solid center. coming over from Cowboys a year ago, and just showing like people hated him on the Cowboys because he was the weak link on that offensive line. But I mean, that Cowboys offensive line is always loaded, so he might have been like the weakest link there, but he was still a good player that people didn't really want to talk about. And yeah, overall, this offensive line, like I could just see it falling apart. The Dolphins did a really good job at neutralizing that last year and not making it as much of a problem as it could be. But if something's going to derail this season, other than obviously health, I see it being the offensive line. And that's also just a testament to how good I think this team is like their biggest weakness being something that McDaniels was really good at neutralizing last year. I don't think it's going to be too much of a concern this year. Like, yeah, they're going to have to game plan around it, but I really believe in the Dolphins this year and their coaching staff. But yeah, the biggest question once again is health. As I said, there, Tyron Smith is an injury question. Tua, man, like I hope he can stay healthy. He is a phenomenal quarterback when he's out there. Like even when healthy, I don't think he is a tier 2 guy. I have him as a tier 3 guy. Someone you can win with, someone who should be your franchise quarterback, but not someone who's going to truly elevate your offense a ton beyond. Like he's going to make this offense click and function and look like the best offense in the league potentially, if he's healthy and everything's working. But I don't think he's going to be able to be like Patrick Mahomes, who can make an less talented offense, like still amazingly coached offense, obviously, but a less talented offense and make it one of these best ones. But throughout this entire team, like they have injury questions. Their running backs, I mean, Jeff Wilson's already on the IR. Raheem Mostert hasn't been able to stay healthy. He's been injury prone since he's come into the league. And then they've already lost Jalen Ramsey in the secondary. They don't have too many like super injury prone guys in the whole on their defense, and like especially bringing in Vic Fangio, I think defensive coaching is a super important part of defense. Like obviously having good players is, but like having a coach like Fangio who can get the most out of his players is very important too. I'm less worried about the offense or the defense getting injured, but yeah, injuries on offense is really the only thing I can see derailing this season. I'm really excited to see what the Dolphins can do this year. But I have two teams in their own division ahead of them, one of them being the New York Jets, who I have finishing 6th in the AFC. Same record as the Dolphins, 11-6 after finishing 7-10 last year. I used a prediction maker to find like all the seedings and stuff and how like that would all worked out. So let's see, why was that the case for that they were ahead? I think they had more division wins. Yeah, I have the Jets going 4-2 in their division, while the Dolphins I have going 3-3. This ends up being that the Jets are obviously 1 seed higher, but I think they're going to be similarly tiered teams, obviously. The biggest difference, though, is their strength is quarterback. Aaron Rodgers is a tier 1 quarterback. Like, I am so excited for him to once again silence the doubters. Aaron Rodgers is one of the reasons why I fell in love with football. He's just, my entire life has been the best quarterback on the field. Like, yeah, Tom Brady's won more. Patrick Mahomes is definitely taking that title. I mean, has taken that title. You know, I don't think Rodgers is still the best quarterback in the league, but like, yeah, he had a down year last year, but the year before he was back-to-back MVPs, and he didn't show a huge physical decline. He was less accurate, but he also like broke his thumb or pinky or finger. I forgot what finger. I think it was thumb on his throwing hand. So yeah, he's going to be less accurate, and he's working with a bunch of young guys. Like there was just Green Bay was a mess last year, and I think part of it definitely was because of Rodgers. But Rodgers seems like a new man. I've been watching Hard Knocks, and yeah, maybe I'm just drinking the Kool-Aid. Maybe I am just an Aaron Rodgers lover. Like, he's a phenomenal quarterback, and I'm sorry. Like, I'm going to tell you how I see it. I think Rodgers makes the New York Jets a true Super Bowl contenders year 1. And, like, it feels weird. The New York Jets are a team to be scared of right now. However, the biggest thing that can hold them back is their offensive line, which I have in tier 3, which might surprise some people. Like, why not tier 4? I don't know. I think this offensive line could actually be good. I think it could be a strength. Is it going to be a strength? I don't know. I'm not going to project that. But Dwayne Brown has been a solid left tackle. I mean, great left tackle throughout his career, but like he's definitely on the downturn. I think he still though is solid. You know, he's at least like top 16 level left tackle. Lincoln Tomlinson had a bit of a down year last year, but like this offense was just a mess in general. And he's proven to be, since being a disappointment in Detroit as a first-round pick, he's turned his career around and been a good to great guard and can get back to there. Connor McGovern, another one of these just solid average centers. Yeah, like you're going to be able to win with that as your center, especially like if your center is your weakest piece, then that's not a problem at all. Especially if he's playing next to a guy like Elijah Vera-Tucker, who is one of these ascending superstar guards. Hopefully he can stay at guard this whole season, and like they don't have a bunch of injuries where they have to be tossing around. Hopefully he doesn't get injured again. But he's had definitely on an upward trajectory in his career. And then Mekhi Becton, I would love to see this. He had such a good rookie season, but has just dealt with injuries. And but one of these guys who gets like called out by the media, like, oh, does he love football? Does he want to play? Like, kind of like, dude, you don't know him. If he's going through an injury, like, and if the coaches, everything I've heard from the Jets since he's been going through these injuries is he's trying to get back. Everything I've seen from him is he's trying to get back. But the media and stuff like that has created this narrative that he doesn't want to play or something like that. And I would just love to see him stay healthy, stay on the field, and really establish himself as one of these star tackles like he looked like he was going to be able to do his rookie season. Yeah, he's big, he's slow, he's like, maybe he's never going to be a tier 1 offensive tackle, but like he can still be a really good guy, like a Trent Brown level, like prime Trent Brown, not like more current Trent Brown, but like, you know what I'm saying? Like he could still be a really, really, really good offensive tackle, and I feel like just everyone's written him off. But if something's going to hold back this team, I think it will be that. And then the biggest wild card here, I have their edge room. A lot of you guys are probably like, what the heck? Tier 4. That is way too low for the Jets. And that's why I have it as my wild card, because I think they can be much better. To clarify, I have 6 tiers for my edge room. So there are 2 more lower tiers, I guess I could have put them in. But my problem with the edge room isn't that they don't have talent. They obviously do. Carl Lawson, great player, but injury concerns. John Franklin Myers, really solid guy, like good against the run, good against the pass. Jermaine Johnson, former first-round pick. Let's see some development, you know, like he had a good year, but not great. Will McDonald, this year's first-round pick. Is he going to come in and be one of these guys right away? Michael Clemens, really good run defending off or edge rusher. Not the best pass rusher, but you know, like with how deep this room is, they're going to be rotating all the guys. Anyways, he's going to be a really solid contributor. And Bryce Huff, once again, a really solid designated pass rusher. They have a lot of guys who I'm like, man, I like them. They're good. But do they have anyone great? And that's what holds me back. Because, yes, you can have a lot of good guys, but if you don't have that one guy who is the chaos maker, then like that could hold this team back. However, like I say that, but they have Quinn and Williams in the middle, so maybe they don't even need that guy on the edge. Like the Chiefs with Chris Jones, the Rams with Aaron Donald, they've proven that you don't need that alpha to be an edge rusher. So, and me putting their edge room as their biggest wild card, like I think that they, like with all the talent there, they could really establish themselves as like a tier 1 pass rushing group. And like until they do that, I'm not going to instantly crown them as a tier 1 group. But man, they look so good. And yeah, that's why I have them as my wild card. They could be way better than this tier 4. And if this defense is one of the best in the leagues, and then this offense obviously like led by Aaron Rodgers, I think is going to be a top unit too. This is another one of these teams that I just don't see the ceiling on. Like they could be the best team in the league, bar none. So as the 5th seed, I have the Baltimore Ravens. Last year finishing 10-7 with some quarterback health questions, you know. This year I think, especially if Lamar can stay healthy, they're going to be a 12-5 team, one of the best in the league, competing. As you will see, I have the number 1 seed with a 13-4 record. I think everyone in this AFC, like the difference between the 1 seed and the 7 seed is literally 2 wins. Like this, everyone here is in a Super Bowl tier, in my opinion. This conference is going to be so much fun to watch, and the Ravens are a big reason for that. Their biggest strength I have is Lamar Jackson. I feel like people are kind of like writing him off because he's been injured. He's been in an offense that suits his strengths, yes, but does it elevate him? That's the question that we've been asking about the Greg Roman offense. Like, yes, it makes Lamar look good. It uses his legs, which is his best part. It uses quick game passing and a couple deep shots a game. It got him a unanimous MVP. You can't say that this offense was terrible, but it really didn't elevate Lamar. It didn't allow him to go toe-to-toe with the best offenses in the league because it relied so much on the ground game and didn't have... the Ravens haven't given him good receivers throughout his career until now. So I think Lamar's going to reestablish himself as a top 5, definitely top 7, but I think he's going to be a top 5 quarterback this year, and it's going to be so much fun to watch. The biggest weakness I have, though, is their interior defensive line and their edge room. Somehow the Ravens always have like a good pass rush, good units, and I think it's going to happen again because like they're just one of those teams. But on paper, just not looking that good. Like Justin Madubuike is a solid pass rusher from the interior. Had a bit of a breakout year last year. I actually think he can like be one of these good guys, but we'll have to see. Michael Pierce is a really solid run defending nose tackle type, but he's just been injured so much. We'll have to see if they get anything from Travis Jones, who would be Pierce's backup if he is injured. 3rd round pick out of UConn last year, who has a lot of theoretical upside, but once again, just because it's theoretical doesn't mean I can say that they are one of these good. Like, you can't say Travis Jones is going to be good because I'm not a Ravens coach. I haven't seen them practice. He could be good. He could be bad. Let's wait and see. And then on the edge, like, I see the promise. Odafe Owe has been, you see the flashes with him, but I think he has been a bit of a disappointment as a first-round pick. Like, he's been a solid guy. I don't think he's going to be a number 1 guy, but he can definitely be a solid number 2, and as a number 3 would be incredible. But right now, he is their number 1 guy. Tyus Bowser has been, once again, one of these guys who, man, you want him on your team. He shows... he's like productive when he's in, but do you really want to rely on him as your every down starter? But that's why you have David Ojabo here, who should have been a first-round pick last year, but sadly he tore his Achilles in the pro day in Michigan, and yeah, that's like when you tear your Achilles as an edge rusher right before you're getting drafted, you're going to slip. He ended up slipping in round 2, but they redshirted him. If he can come back and show some of if he can come back this year and be that like alpha pass rusher, which like he wasn't at Michigan because he was the number 2 guy behind Aiden Hutchinson, or opposite of Aiden Hutchinson, but like he has the speed, he has the power, he has all the tools, I think, to make him a top tier edge rusher. Like he still went in the first round despite tearing his Achilles. Like, yeah, modern medicine is awesome, and a lot of these guys can come back and look perfectly fine, but there still is a red flag, and a lot of teams will like kind of hold off on that. But his talent shone through and got him picked in the 2nd round last year. And if he can hit that upside, then he could at least like elevate the edge room from being away from the biggest weakness on this team. And let me also say that like when I'm getting to a 12-5 team who I'm saying could win the Super Bowl, biggest weakness, like, yeah, it's a weakness, but like it's not like some of the other teams out here where like especially you're going to see the Cardinals and the Rams where it's I just won't say more about that until we get there. But yeah, like even though it is a weakness, like it is something that I think this team has shown that they've been able to overcome in the past, and I don't see any reason why they won't be able to overcome it this year. The biggest wild card for the Ravens this year is going to be Todd Monken, the new offensive coordinator coming over from Georgia. I have him as in the tier 5 of offensive coaching right now because while he was able to do some good stuff with Georgia. I just said it. Wow. With Georgia last year, he has coached in the NFL before and hasn't been the most successful, to put it softly. Like, he's had some solid offenses. He was the offensive coordinator for 3 years with Tampa Bay and then 1 year with Cleveland. His last year in Tampa, he had the 3rd most yards and 12th most points, but then also that was James Winston's 30 for 30 years, so it's like very aggressive offense. We'll have to see how he caters it to Lamar Jackson and his skill set, because let's be honest, Lamar and Jameis are very different quarterbacks. Let's see how much of that run game he does use with Lamar, and how does he make his receivers look. I mean, he has three guys who have a ton of upside with Odell, who I think people have written off way too fast, Zay Flowers, and Rashad Bateman. And, like, this could be, like, a really good offense, and, like, obviously that's why the Ravens have brought him in, because he showed that he's been able to elevate offenses, at least at the college level. And, I mean, let's be honest, Jameis Winston is a backup quarterback now, and he had him throw for 30 touchdowns and be one of the best offenses in the league, even though if it was very turnover prone, like, he still coordinated a decent offense. So, like, that's his new system is part of the reason why I'm very high on the Ravens, but I also do think it's the biggest wild card, because you can't just say it's going to be great. We don't know. All right, so now we get to move on to the division winners, starting things off with Jacksonville Jaguars. I have finishing as the 4 seed with a 9-8 record. Same as they had last year. I see the improvements. I love the improvements that they made on offense, but man, this defense is really still giving me some pause, which we will get into in just a second. But first, I want to talk about the biggest strength, which is Trevor Lawrence. He's shown that he is that elite guy who's worthy of the number 1 overall pick. Yeah, he just had it for a couple flashes at the end, or I guess like a couple weeks at the end of last year. But I believe that was legit. There's nothing that's saying it wasn't, saying that it was just a flash in the pan. Like, this is what we expected to see from Trevor Lawrence, and he's shown it. I guess now we got to just see him keep showing it, but he's become the quarterback that we expected coming out of Clemson. And yeah, it took a second with the whole Urban Meyer debacle, but I really believe that he can establish himself as definitely a top 6, maybe even better than that quarterback this season. I mean, you got Calvin Ridley to throw the ball to now, as well as Christian Kirk's already there, Zay Jones. That's a good wide receiver trio with Evan Ingram, that tight end, quasi tight end, and ETN in the backfield. Like, this is a good group of weapons surrounding Trevor Lawrence. Offensive line is definitely questionable. I think that could hold back this offense from being a top tier unit, but I mean, when you have an elite quarterback, that just changes the game. And I believe the Jaguars finally have that. It's really exciting to be a fan of them right now, if you are. But this defense is still, I believe, going to hold them back. Ever since Gus Bradley in the 2017 Saxonville days, it just hasn't been the same defense. They have the pieces. You can see the promise of it. They've been trying to invest in it with multiple first-round picks at the edge, with Caleb on Chase on Josh Allen, Trayvon Walker. So far, only Josh Allen has hit. Trayvon Walker's obviously only in year 2. He's got time. I'll just talk about them both in tandem because I feel like it fits. Trayvon Walker is my biggest wild card. If he can start to show why he was picked at the number 1 overall selection over guys like Aiden Hutchinson, Sauce Gardner, at this point, I don't know if you could be more valuable than Sauce Gardner. What he did was insane, but you've got to show that you are a top-tier edge rusher sooner rather than later, or else why pick that guy with the number 1 overall pick? But yeah, they just got other concerning pieces on their defense, in my opinion. Their linebackers really disappointed for being a big-name free agent in Foyesade Oluokun and number 1 draft pick. What was his name? Devin Lloyd. Like, they should have been a better group than that, in my opinion. Lorenzo Fatukasi really disappointed as a free agency addition for them last year. He was really supposed to beef up the middle. Luckily, Hamilton did step up in his stead, but you want to see him start producing more like how he did on the Jets rather than how he looked last year on the Jags. Their corners, they should be fine. I mean, Tyson Campbell was really playing like one of the better corners in the league quietly for them last year. Darius Williams has had his he's really succeeded more on the outside, and that's looks like where they're going to play him more after trying to experiment with him in the slot. But still, not a group that I feel incredibly confident about. And same can be said about their safeties. They got a good one in Andre Sisco. Hopefully that's what it's looking like. He's entering year 3 and kind of on that upward trajectory. Sean Jenkins, just a solid guy, but really, are you excited about it? And that's just how I feel about this whole defense in general. I see it. I see the potential. I see there's some promise. There's some unexciting but solid guys. But when you're competing for a Super Bowl in the AFC, this just feels like a defense that's going to get torn to shred by the likes of Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow. You know what I'm saying? And then speaking of those guys, we got Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals taking home the 3 seed. As you can see, everything here has been incredibly tight. The Ravens were 12-5 as the 5 seed. I think the Bengals are going to win the division at 12-5. I guess regressing from last year, 12-4, kind of weird situation there, you know. But yeah, like at this point, the Bengals are legit. They got one of the best, top 3 quarterbacks in the entire league in Joe Burrow. Like, he's been that since day one, and he's just continuing to show it over and over again that he is that guy. And he also has the best group of weapons to throw to in Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd. Like, that's a quarterback's dream. I mean, even Irv Smith is no slouch if he can just stay healthy. They've really tried investing in this offensive line. We'll see if this is the year where it finally starts paying off. Like, they have 4 guys at tackles who, like, you're like, man, please at least give them 2. And then along the interior, they're still got some question marks. And Volson starting. Wait, Volson, right? Yeah, Volson starting there. But I mean, Cross and Kappa are both like solid players. I think that just with all the different pieces that they do have, they're gonna at least get at least a mid-level offensive line, and with all the other pieces that they have there on offense, like they're just once again gonna be one of the best unless they see some significant regression from each position. And then, so for both the biggest weakness and the biggest wild card, I put safety. This is because like safety is just glaringly by far the weakest part of this team. Like every other position I have as a top 3 tier. I guess offensive line could have been the other weakness I put there in tier 3. Edge rusher I put as tier 3, but like I don't think their edge room is bad. It's just like, is it the same strength as some of the other teams? No, but they're still going to be able to generate pressure and be a good defensive line. And you could say Irv Smith is a weakness, but I think that's more so due to his injury. And really, like, the Bengals don't even use their tight end. So, yeah, it might be a weakness, but is it a weakness that matters? Safety is the one where, like, I could see that derailing their season, but I could also just see it being completely fine. Going into it the year, I have them ranked as the worst safety group in the league. You got Dax Hill and Nick Scott, or Dax Hill is like the for sure starter. Nick Scott, Jordan battling out there for the safety 2 spot. But, you know, a lot of teams do those 3 safety packages anyway, so I won't be surprised if they did decide to go with that. But so first starting off with the Dax Hill, like he was a first round pick last year. They're expecting him to come in and produce like a first round pick. They drafted him to be the replacement for what's his name, Jesse Bates. And yeah, let's see it. Year 2, like those are some big shoes to fill. But Dax Hill was a good player at Michigan. Like he didn't have the best rookie season, but with a full-time starting gig from week 1 now, like establish yourself. Like that's why it's a wild card. He could be a really good safety. He was picked in the first round, you know, but he's also just like a young guy that we haven't seen play a lot. And what we have seen so far in the NFL hasn't been great. Nick Scott, another one of these guys, like not another one in the same, like he was a former first round pick. No, he was an undrafted guy for the Rams who's now suddenly starting for the Bengals this year. Like he's got to show that he deserves that spot and not be like a terrible weakness. Jordan Battle was picked in the 3rd round this year out of Alabama, a good player, but once again, just a young guy. I think this will be the weakest part of the defense, something that teams like, especially like with all these AFC powerhouses that want to go deep, I'm thinking like the Chiefs when they can, Josh Allen and his mega arm. I think Rodgers will want to attack them downfield. All the speed that they have in Miami, like that could really hurt this defense if they aren't able to keep a cap on these explosive offenses. And then at my 2 seed, I have the Buffalo Bills. Same thing. Everyone's so close in this conference. Like I'm just so excited to see how it shakes out because, you know, I'm probably going to be wrong and that's okay. This is just how I'm seeing it. This is what I think is most likely going to happen. This is what if I had to predict what's going to happen, this is what I'm going to think. But man, all these teams are so good, and it's just going to be like the way the ball bounces is what really separates one team from another team. Like And yeah, let's get into why the Bills, despite having a quieter offseason where they didn't, it's tough to improve when you're already looking like the best team in the league. Like on paper, they had the best roster, and yeah, they had a bit of a setback late in the year. So it's hard to improve when you're already viewed as the best team on paper, and now you got this Stephon Diggs drama. They obviously fell apart last year towards the end. I think it's hard to really blame them with what happened with Damar Hamlin. Like you can't. That must have been something like really hard to push through, and like yeah, Hamlin isn't like a superstar player, but he was a solid starter, an ascending young player for them, and to just suddenly be like, yo, this guy almost died, like. I couldn't imagine what these plays were going through. Hopefully, like this year, they're able to get past it all. Damar Hamlin looks like he's going to play, which is just absolutely incredible. I love that. But this is still one of the best teams in the league. Everyone's fading them. I even have like, in my gut, I kind of wanted to fade them. But just looking at this team, it's like, man, they're just so freaking good. How are you not going to say they're one of the best teams in the AFC once again? I mean, first off, just Josh Allen. He's a superhuman quarterback. There was times that last year he looked better than Mahomes. Like, it's okay to say that. Mahomes is the best and should be the highest standard that we hold for a quarterback. But that doesn't mean that every single week, every single year, he's going to be the best quarterback that week, that year. There are some times where Mahomes just, like, someone's going to outplay him. That's the nature of the sport. That's the beauty of the thing. Despite Mahomes being the default number one, Josh Allen is going to play better sometimes. The way they throw everything on his plate and he stands up to the challenge. Like, yeah, he got injured last year, and then he started making a lot more, like, bro, what are you doing type of plays. But, like, there's no team that really relies on the quarterback as much as the Bills. And he's lived up to any sort of expectation you could place on him. Especially with this offensive line in front of them, I still think it's a weakness. They've tried addressing it a bit in the past, but I just still do not believe it's enough. Like, Deion Dawkins is a solid tackle. The other Connor McGovern, kind of like a below-average guard. Ryan Bates, below-average guard. Mitch Morse, like your average center. Spencer Brown has not been a good pick so far. Like, they just have a bunch of guys who are like, they're fine, I guess. Like, if a couple of them were like your fourth or fifth best offensive lineman, then that's fine. But seeing that they're all in that tier, it just, when your expectations is Super Bowl or bust, this is something that's going to hold you back. They did draft Osiris Torrance in the second round. We'll see if he ends up starting at some point in this year. My bad, I guess Ryan Bates is no longer starting for them, which is probably the best course of action for them. Good to see Osiris Torrance, the rookie second round pick, is already stepping up and starting. He does theoretically upgrade this offensive line. And if you can get a couple solid pieces, push this into more of the tier 3 offensive line, then with the rest of this talent on offense, that's going to be, once again, one of the best in the league. And then, so for my biggest wild card, I have Sean McDermott. Now, some of you guys are probably like, what? Like, he's been the coach for years. We kind of know what we're getting. Well, in case you didn't know, their defensive coordinator, Leslie Frazier, stepped down this offseason. Well, not like stepped down. I guess he's taking like a year off. I don't entirely know the situation. All I know is this year, Sean McDermott's going to go back to being the defensive play caller, which he hasn't been in the past couple of years. I don't think he's been it since his days in Carolina. And obviously, he's a good defensive coordinator. That's what's got him here. And the defenses that he's overall overseen, despite not being the play caller, have been dominant despite, like, I mean, this year, I think they've got some serious talent across the board on defense. But in past years, they've been like, yeah, like, these guys are just all, like, okay level players, okay names that are being elevated by Sean McDermott and Leslie Frazier. But now, like, this is a whole different ballpark, being the de facto defensive coordinator and the head coach. Like, that's two different jobs, two very difficult, time-consuming jobs. Some people are able to do it, some people aren't. I'm not going to tell you whether or not Sean McDermott can or can't because I'm not in the room. I don't know. Like, I've never seen him do it. That's why it's a wild card. Like, is this defense going to have its worst season in a while despite being still on paper like a really good-looking defense? Or are they going to, like, is Sean McDermott still just going to keep up the quality of excellence here? We'll have to find out. And then, shocker, number 1 seed, Kansas City Chiefs. Like, where have you heard this one before? They just feel inevitable at this point. As I've said before, everything can go like games can change with one bounce of the ball, but if you aren't coming in with like the Chiefs default as the best options, then you're trying to predict something to be different. Like, I'm not saying that's necessarily a bad thing. Like, you might have a good feeling. You might be able to see like better. Like, obviously there's a really good chance, I think, that the Chiefs aren't the 1 seed, but they've earned that benefit of the doubt that they're just going to get it done, win more games than the other team. Like, Patrick Mahomes, yeah, like as I said before, he almost didn't even make the Super Bowl, right? Like, it came down to that play where the Bengals defender pushed him out of bounds and really helped extend that drive and ensure that the Chiefs were able to get that win. If that doesn't happen, the Bengals, I mean, very much could have won that game. We can't say it one way or the other, but like, imagine if Joe Burrow was 4-0 against Patrick Mahomes and was coming off a Super Bowl win right now. Honestly, like, I probably wouldn't be putting the Chiefs as the number 1 seed. Like, is that a little bit biased of what happened? Yeah, but like, I also think that the past does matter in that because that they are able to find a way to come out on top more often than not. Like, they deserve that nod. They deserve that recognition and that praise. I have them going 13-4 once again. So yeah, just one more win than the 2, 3, and 5 seeds, but that's enough to get them the first round bye. Their biggest strength, Patrick Mahomes. What do you want me to say? Like, watch some football. I don't really think you guys need me to tell you why I think he's the best quarterback in the league. But their biggest weakness I have as their edge rushing room. And I've been in tier 6 right now because they just don't have established guys. You're hoping George Karloff, just the first round pick out of last year, who I really liked coming out of Purdue, he steps up a bit. Felix Anudike-Uzomah is a rookie that they drafted at the end of the first round this year. You're hoping that he's able to take that starting gig away from Mike Dana at some point and have at least like a high upside pass rush. We'll see how often they're able to hit on that. But yeah, right now it's a couple really young guys who haven't shown anything in the NFL yet, obviously. And Anudike-Uzomah is a rookie, so he hasn't had the opportunity to. And then Mike Dana, who's just been kind of like you want him as like a number 3, 4 type of guy. Like, you want him on your team, but do you want him as your starter? I don't know. And then for their biggest wild card, I have these receivers because, I mean, we saw them piece it together last year and use Kelsey as the number 1 and really show like, hey, we don't need Tyreek Hill to win. And very impressive for them. Congratulations. That was incredible offensive design, incredible work by Patrick Mahomes, by Andy Reid, Eric Bieniemy, who's gone now. We'll see how big of an impact that makes as well. But yeah, like right now they're rolling in with Marcus Valdes-Scantling, Sky Moore, Kadarius Toney, Justin Watson, Rashee Rice, Richie James, and Justin Ross. I mean, you see the promise there. Kadarius Toney, former first-round pick. Sky Moore, former second-round pick. MVS, he's been a good deep threat throughout his career. Justin Watson, as a depth piece, you could do a lot worse. Rashee Rice is a rookie, second-round pick. Richie James, he's just kind of balled out in New York, in San Francisco before that. Like, people, like, he doesn't get the big name recognition because he's not a big name, but, like, he's a good player. And then Justin Ross is the ultimate wild card. He looked like he should be a top 5 pick his rookie or for his freshman season playing in Clemson with Trevor Lawrence. But he has just not been able to stay healthy. Like, it's just been tragic, injury after injury. That's definitely taken away from his athleticism, which already wasn't like, I mean, yeah, he's a top tier athlete, but in NFL standards, like, you got to be that next level to be a one of these game-changing receivers. And it looks like he's lost that step with his injuries, but if he's able to be that guy we saw at the beginning of his career in Clemson playing with Patrick freaking Mahomes, like, all of a sudden you have a true alpha number 1 receiver in Ross. You have like a couple gimmicky slot guys who could really produce in Moore and Toney. You have your deep threats in Justin Watson, Marquise Valdes-Scantling, Richie James, another one of those like slot/deep threats. Rashee Rice, we'll see how. I don't think he's going to really contribute much year 1, but like down the line, this has once again one of these receiver rooms with all the potential in the world, especially because you have Andy Reid drawing up the plays and Patrick Mahomes throwing you the ball. But until we can see that talent come to fruition on the field, that's what makes them the big wild card, you know? Now on the NFC side of things, kicking things off with the 16 seed Arizona Cardinals. Once again, going from the most chalky pick in the 1 seed Chiefs to the most chalky 16 seed Cardinals. Last year they went 4-13, and I predicted them once again at 4-13. Although I feel like this is much closer to their ceiling than it is their floor. This is just not a talented football team right now, and I hope that they prove me wrong. I'm not trying to prey on anyone's downfall, but when you see all these other teams to be so excited about, and then you look at the Cardinals, I mean, their biggest strength is safety, and they do have a really good safety room. Buda Baker and Jalen Thompson, Buda is one of the best safeties in the entire league in general, and then Thompson, he's really established himself as the perfect running mate opposite of him. And when your safeties are the ones I love those guys. Those are the best players on my team. You probably aren't a good team. I'm sorry. Not to say that safeties aren't an important position in football, but there are just so many other positions. And when you look at the rest of this defense, I'm just going to read you off their starters. So their starting defensive line is going to be LJ Collier, Leki Fotu, and Jonathan Ledbetter. The edge rushers are linebacker Zaven Collins, converted to edge, and Dennis the Barbarian Gardeck. But don't wait, BJ Ojolari, second round pick, is also in the wings, and then a couple of third round picks last year in Cameron Thomas and Majay Sanders are back there too. At linebacker, they have Chris Barnes and Kaiser White. Safety, at corner, they have Marco Wilson, Cottrell Clark, and Antonio Hamilton. And then I've listed their strength at safety. I'll let you guys come to the conclusion on why I put them as a tier 5 defense and their biggest weakness. I actually have them ranked as the worst defense in the league, and I think that will show. The only hope that the Cardinals have at winning games this season, I believe, is Kyler Murray coming back early from his ACL. We've seen it before with quarterbacks just recovering, and athletes in general, recovering faster and faster from these ACLs. And I believe that he is still a top 8 elite level quarterback. Maybe not quite elite. Maybe high end, very top that franchise tier with the definite potential to be an elite guy. He's got all the talent in the world. He's smaller, but he's still got a strong arm. He's one of the best runners of the football. There was definitely an argument before Fields breaks out and during Lamar Jackson's height. People were saying is Kyler the better runner? He's great at avoiding hits. He tore his ACL, but that's a non-contact thing. That's not going to hopefully happen too much more. Kyler's the master at sliding, getting down, or going out of bounds. And even with an offense that was led by a man who was fired from multiple college jobs and then somehow got an NFL job and refused to use motion and run complex patterns and just doing air raid stuff that doesn't even really work too well in college anymore. That's not going to work in the NFL. But Kyler was still able to look like the MVP 2 years ago. People just tend to forget that until that week 7 or week 8. It was after their 7-0 start when they played the Packers in primetime and just kind of fell apart with that AJ Green not looking for the ball, Rasul Douglas pick right at the end, and since then it just went downhill, and people only remember the bad. Kyler still has great play in him. It's not saying that if they have the number 1 overall pick, they should pass on Caleb Williams, but if Kyler is able to come back early and really pushes to play and does play, Cardinals could play themselves out of the number 1 overall pick. We'll have to see, but yeah, that's why he's their biggest wild card. Then at the 15 seed, I have the Washington Commanders. They finished last year 8-1, and this year I have them finishing 5-12, which, once again, this is one of the teams that has a really wide range of outcomes, but just based off of what we've seen so far, I think it's hard to really predict the Commanders having a good season when you look at who they play specifically. Obviously they have to play the NFC East opponents twice, who, let's face it, all 3 are playoff caliber teams. All 3 made the playoffs last year and look to arguably have gotten better. I still give them 2 wins in the NFC East, which is maybe more than they'll be able to get. Maybe they will be able to do better than that, but that's just a hard slate. And then they also have to face the AFC East and the NFC West. Like those aren't easy pushover divisions. Like, yeah, there's a couple easier teams in there, but they're just kind of getting like screwed by who they have to play. And yeah, if you want to be the best, you have to beat the best sort of deal. And I just don't think the Commanders are quite there yet. But let's talk about what is there. And this defensive line is insane. I mean, Montez Sweat, Jared Allen, De'Ron Payne, and Chase Young, I think, definitely have the potential to be the best group in the whole league. Montez Sweat has been a plus pass rusher and really like an elite run defender off the edge since being drafted in 2019. Chase Young has disappointed so far, but that's more so due to injury and not product of play. Like, I think that he can definitely come back and really show like, hey, I'm still Chase Young, like former number 2 overall draft pick that deserved all the hype that he got coming out of Ohio State. He still has that player in him. We just got to see it. Hopefully the injuries didn't take away what should have been an incredible career from this young man. And then De'Ron Payne just got paid in the middle to go next to Jared Allen, who is one of the best. Like, you're not going to find a better interior duo than those two, you know? This defensive line is going to create havoc for the quarterback. They're going to stop the run and really allow the back of the defense to play the way they want to. And yeah, when you have a strong defensive front, it just makes the entire defense better. And it really also helps you impose your will and win, like, the physical, mental side of it. You know, like, if you're just beating up the offensive line the entire game, they're going to get tired. The quarterback's going to get tired. The receivers are going to be frustrated because, yeah, they're going to get open a couple times against these corners, but if they're open and the quarterback's being sacked, it doesn't really matter, you know? So the biggest weakness that I have for these Commanders is their offensive line. I have them in their tier 4, which is the lowest tier. And overall, I actually have them as the second worst offensive line. I just like, there's a bunch of fine players, but no one stands out at all. So like Charles Leno, just complete average tackle. He's gonna, like, people are going to complain about him because that's what you do with an average tackle, but he's fine there. Chris Paul, Nick Gates, they just haven't really shown much up to this point throughout their career. I mean, maybe Nick Gates will be fine. It's easier to hide a center, obviously. Sam Cosmi, they're moving him into guard, which I thought was a bit weird. He was a decent tackle, second-round pick a couple seasons ago, and is developing there, but hasn't established himself as a top guy. So with them bringing over Andrew Wiley, who actually he's on an upward trajectory for his career, so I think he should be at least like an average guy for him. They decided their best course of action was to kick Cosmi inside. We'll have to see how he plays there, but yeah, like, this is just a group where they all just look fine. And actually, slight correction here, I guess Sadiq Charles is going to be starting for them at guard. I just wanted to confirm that. I took my notes notes before the cut date, which probably wasn't the best idea, so I just went back in and checked. And yeah, so Sadiq Charles, once again, a 2020 4th-round pick, who, like, just is an unexciting, they're just all, like, unexciting players. You don't see really the upside with any of them outside of, I guess, Cosmi, but even him moving into guard is like, okay, like, you don't love seeing your, you drafted a guy to play tackle for you, and after just like 2 years, you're already like, okay, let's try him at guard instead. And then the biggest wild card on this team is one of the biggest wild cards of the season, last 5 seasons. That's Sam Howell. I thought he was the best quarterback coming out of that draft 2 years ago, or last year, yeah. And he ended up slipping all the way to the 5th round, which I just thought was crazy. You saw a guy who really succeeded in the vertical passing attack in his junior season over at USC, or the year before he was eligible. I forgot if he came out as a true junior or, yeah, but either way, the year before he came out in the draft, like, he was looking great. Throwing it downfield to the likes of Dianami Brown and just looking like the true captain of that UNC offense and looking like a potential, like, top 5 pick. Then the next year, everyone leaves. The coaching staff, a lot of the players, they go into the NFL because they were a really good team, and the entire team just changes. I mean, he became, like, quasi fullback for him. He led the nation in rushing. Like, this was a completely different quarterback, and a lot of people really dinged him for that. And obviously they dinged him. They dropped him all the way down to the 5th round eventually. Like, that didn't make sense to me. Because in my opinion, you saw a guy who was able to operate multiple different offenses and didn't complain. He just put his nose to the grindstone and was like, yes, coach, like, you want me to be a vertical downfield passing offense? I can do that. And he did it. You want me to be an RPO heavy, run the ball, run over the linebacker type of quarterback? I'm going to do that for you because he wants to win. And we only saw him 1 week last year. You can't overreact to that. But he looked good in his final week. And yeah, the offensive line here is a problem, but I really think that he has a couple of great options to go to. Obviously, Terry McLaurin's injured right now, so hopefully he's able to get on the field sooner rather than later. But you got Jahan Dotson, great number 1 pick last year, 15 overall or whatever it was, but like number 1 first round, that's what I'm trying to say. And Curtis Samuel is that like stereotypical gadget guy who is really good in his role. You also got Diami Brown, the guy who I said they took away from Howell at UNC. Now they're reunited. I don't see Sam Howell being bad. I don't see him being a tier 5 quarterback. I think he's going to be able to establish himself as their franchise quarterback. It might not lead to a lot of winning here in year 1, but year 2, year 3, I think Sam Howell's still there. He's still winning. He's still improving. And the Commanders could be a real team, like especially with the new ownership. If they change their name, I kind of want them to do that again because like they're the Commanders. But yeah, I think the Commanders are on the up and up. Even though I have their record going down, you got to take 1 step forward to go 2 step back. You know what I mean? So at the 14th seed, I have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Last year they finished with a record of 8-9. This year I have them finishing 5-12. A lot of that has to do with their schedule being harder than the rest of the NFC South, as they had the number 1 seed or the number 1 division schedule, you know, like they have to go against the better players. And also, like, I just think obviously you're going to see some regression without Tom Brady. Like, well, what? You lose Tom Brady, you get worse? Yeah, that's going to happen. The biggest strength, like, this is very big picture, as you can see, as their biggest strength and biggest weakness. This is the only time I'm going to do this, but I just think the dichotomy of this team is just more pronounced than with any other team. I think the Buccaneers are a top 10 defense still. I put them in my tier 2, and they just got like across the board talent. And head coach Todd Bowles, he's still a good defensive coordinator, even if he hasn't shown in multiple locations that he can be a good head coach. Like, he still gets this defense working, and they invested in Kalijah Kancey to help. I think he's the perfect complement to Vita Vea. You got the big, hulking, powerful nose tackle and this speedy Aaron Donald 2.0, but no one can be Aaron Donald and Kalijah Kancey. Like, that could be quickly one of the better interior groups in the league. And then you got Shaq Barrett, Joe Tryon-Shoyinka. You can see how those two can be good. Shaquille's been good in the past. Tryon's former first-round pick, who's been ascending throughout the years. One of the better linebacker duos in White and David. White is a bit overrated sometimes, but he's still a good player. Like, I think it's kind of like the Ezekiel Elliott syndrome, where he was overrated, and because he was overrated, now everyone's pointed out how he was overrated, and now maybe he's a little bit underrated. And then this secondary, like, I still think it's a solid secondary. They brought back Carlton Davis, Jamil Dean. I think they'll find another player to play in the slot. We'll see if Delaney holds on to it. Maybe Zion McCollum, a young player, can play on the outside, and they can move Dean into the nickel. Like, they got some options there, but still, like, I think it's going to be a top 10 corner room, and then safeties, top 5 room right there, and Antoine Winfield and Ryan Neal. I mean, Antoine Winfield's been one of the best safeties since he stepped onto the field. Second-round pick in 2020, I believe, whatever their Super Bowl year was. He just instantly came in and was like, yeah, like, this guy should have gone in the first round. And Ryan Neal was one of the most underrated players last year. Like, watching through the Seattle games, like, every week he was making plays as, like, a strong safety, box safety type of guy, playing near the line of scrimmage, but making plays in both run defense and in coverage. There's no reason why this defense can't help them win more games than you think they should, especially looking at this offense, which is a weird thing to say for a offense that has maybe like a top 10 wide receiver duo in the league in Godwin and Evans. But outside of that, they really got nothing. I mean, anything you get from Baker Mayfield now is house money. yeah, I can see a world where he looks like he did 2, 3 years ago and starts playing like a borderline top 10 quarterback once again. But as you get farther and farther from that point, it's harder and harder to predict that's going to happen, especially as he's moving from team to team to team. Like, this many people giving up on you is never a good sign. Running back, like, how much do you believe in Rashad White? Tight end, like Cade Hawton's their starting tight end right now. Like, he's just a young, unproven guy. And I have their offensive line in the tier 4 at the bottom. Like, other than Tristan Wirfs, who you even got to say, like, there's going to be some question marks there, him moving from right to left. I think he's going to answer those right away. But, like, I think he's going to be just fine, still be an elite player. But to say that it's not a question is just false. Like, it's a difference, and it could affect his play. I don't think it will. I'm not going to predict it. But it's something to keep your eye on. Matt Filer coming out and has been, like, the definition of average guard until last year, where he looks like he's starting to maybe hit that cliff. Ryan Jensen, man, that's so sad, out for the year. Hopefully Hainsey can step up in his place. Cody Mock, second round pick, raw developmental guy. We'll have to see how he does. Luke Gadecki, second, maybe third round pick last year. Same thing. Like, this is just a very young offensive line, and you saw what happened when the offensive line started falling apart in Cleveland with Baker Mayfield. Like, he needs that offensive line to be something that he trusts and can rely on to give him the protection, and he can execute your offense. But if he's under constant pressure, then he's also going to start feeling like he's under constant pressure and making worse decisions, and everything's just going to spiral down from there. He is my biggest wild card for a reason, though, because, yeah, we have seen top 10 caliber play from Baker Mayfield in the past. Do I think they're going to hit it? No. And that's why I think this offense is still going to be a weakness, and I think that this team is not going to be a very good one this year. But to just simply say, or to say anything else as their biggest wild card, I just think isn't true. Like, I think Baker Mayfield is what can flip the tides of this team more than anyone else on this roster. And then as my 13 seed, I have the Los Angeles Rams, and my God, talk about stars and scrubs. I do have them improving, going to 6-11 from 5-12 last year. Hopefully they get a bit less injuries. You know, like last year they were just hit at every single spot. Aaron Donald got hurt, Matthew Stafford, Cooper Kupp, like all their stars in the stars and scrubs approach got hurt. And when that happens, then you only got the scrubs, you know what I'm saying? But you do still have one of the best coaches in the entire league in Sean McVay. I have him in the tier 1. He's been to a Super Bowl, won a Super Bowl still, like after 7 or 8 years as a coach. He's the youngest coach in the league. Yeah, he really went through a tough time mentally last year from the sounds of it. I mentioned this podcast before, but go listen to the play callers if you want a bit more of an insight into how he was feeling. Like, he talked about it, and I am fully confident he's going to come back and be Sean McVay once again and lead this team to some winning football. Like, yeah, 6-11 isn't the best record, but I think it's better than a lot of people are expecting them to go this season. And I think McVay understands that this is a rebuilding period. And yes, he's going to try to win as much as he can, but he's now coming into it with the mentality that, hey, like, I mean, I'm just going to skip the biggest weakness right now and go to their biggest wild card. This is a young team. 31 players are in years 1 through 3, including, as of like a few days ago, 17 rookies. Let me make sure that number is still correct. All right, it looks like they moved some of those guys to the practice squad because there are 14 rookies on the roster and 19 total rookies, like another 5 on the practice squad. But yeah, this is just a team that is full of youth, and that's like what makes them such a big question mark. Like, normally when you have so many young players, some of them are going to hit. Some of these guys are going to be like, wow, like they really found a guy. Like, say it's going to be Puka Nacua or Byron Young or Ernest Brown. Like, some of these guys who we just don't really know much about yet. Some of them are going to step up and play a lot better than we think they are. But overall, when you just have that much youth, that much inexperience, you typically see more bad than good. And it's not to say that they aren't going to have their flashes like this. I think they're actually going to be a lot more of an exciting team than people are going to talk about because of all the youth. And they're going to be like, wow, like, what are the Rams building over there? How are they going to look next year? But right now, I just don't really see it, especially looking at this defense. they just don't have anyone established other than Aaron Donald. I like Jordan Fuller too. He's been a really good safety for them as a 6th-round pick a couple years ago. Keller Witherspoon is someone who I really want to believe in. He's someone who I did believe in, but just like after his days in San Francisco, he just hasn't looked like the same player. But yeah, like outside of that, they just have guys who have either barely played, made some plays. Like Ernest Jones, he's made some plays, especially in their Super Bowl run, but like since then, it's been fine. And they just need these guys to step up. And once again, it's the sort of thing where until they do, like you're going to look at them and be like, yeah, this is just like on paper, not a good unit. You can recognize that some of these guys are going to over exceed expectations. Some of these guys are going to fall short of their low expectations too. You know, that's the way football works. And I think this offense is going to be able to put up a bit more points than people expect. I mean, Matthew Stafford is still a good quarterback. They have Cooper Kupp, hopefully. Like, that's another thing, man. Is he going to play? That could really tank this whole team. But Van Jefferson, Tutu Atwell, like they got some talent there. This offensive line could be a question mark, but like the Rams seem to have like every other year their offensive line's good, they're bad. Like we'll see how it works out this season. But yeah, I think this defense is really going to hold them back. But that's not to say this isn't going to be an exciting year for Rams fans to watch, as they do just have such youth and like young talent that like you're going to want to see what happens. And it could show like, hey, like next year you could be talking about the 4 or 5 young guys who really established themselves as young potential stars. Also, just want to make a quick correction because I did recount the Rams roster just to make sure with the rookies number changing that the 31 young players were still the same. It's actually 32. I guess they signed another second or third year player there. And then at the 12th seed, I have the Chicago Bears, improving 3-14 to 7-10, over doubling their wins. Which, like, yeah, some Bears fans might be disappointed. Like, oh, like we're gonna be a lot better than 7-10, but like, come on, like. This was the team with the number 1 overall pick for a reason. But they are definitely getting more talented. Starting off with this linebacking core, like, yeah, it's kind of like safety, where is it the best thing that your biggest strength is your linebacking core? No, probably not. You want to have other strengths, but to say it's not a strength would just be a lie. I mean, Tremaine Edmonds, TJ Edwards, Edmonds is the higher upside player theoretically, but Edwards has been the better player so far, and they got 2 really good linebackers that should make this one of the best units in the league. Really weird considering they traded away Roquan Smith, but you know what, like it works out. They still got a good linebacking core, and Jack Sanborn back there too, like as an undrafted guy last year, showed a lot of promise and potential. Kind of makes it even weirder that they brought in 2 big name free agents, but hey, like if this is what you want to be your strength, this is your strength. So they succeeded in that, but they didn't even really address this defensive line, which I think is a complete mistake. I mean, I guess to say they didn't address it is not true. They brought in Andrew Billings, and then rookies Gervin Dexter and Zach Pickens for their defensive tackles. And then Yannick Ngakoue was a solid pickup, I think, for the edge room, as well as DeMarcus Walker. They should have 2 new starters there. But overall, like, yeah, like you hear the names I'm saying, like this is going to be their starting. Those 5 guys are going to be playing most of their snaps, as well as Justin Jones, like at defensive tackle. Like those, are you really excited about that? No, like they didn't address the biggest weakness on this team last year, and I mean, yeah, once again, did not address it. They spent a second, third round pick on interior defensive line, signed Yannick Ngakoue. They made some improvements to it, but not improvements in a way where I think it's going to at least make a difference in year 1. What can make a difference this year, though, is Justin Fields. I still have him as a tier 4 quarterback, which a lot of Bears fans might be upset about too, but he just wasn't a good passer last year. And if you disagree with that, I mean, look at the numbers. Let me pull them up real quick. So last year he threw for 2,242 yards, 17 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. Yards per attempt was 7.1. Threw a touchdown on 5.3% of his throws, an interception on 3.5. Completed 60.4% of his passes. Like he averaged 149 yards per game. He took 55 sacks, which led the entire league. I'm sorry, he wasn't a good passing quarterback last year, but what he was one of the best rushing quarterbacks in the entire league, arguably the best last year with Lamar being hurt, Kyler being hurt. Like he really is like put his name in the hat for that. And if he can take some steps up as a passer, like teams are afraid of his legs now. That's going to open up throwing windows for him. It's going to open up the ground game too for the running backs. Like this offense, I think could be really good. Especially, I love the addition of DJ Moore to go with Darnell Mooney and Chase Claypool. The offensive line has been improving. They spent a first-round pick on Darnell Wright this season to help bolster that. Like I think this offense could be pretty good if Fields takes that next step as a passer. And we've even seen it in the past at Ohio State. He was a better passer at Ohio State than he is now for Chicago. He had more accuracy. I mean, he was throwing to the most wide open receivers money could buy. I mean, I guess money couldn't buy it back then, but like wink, wink. Yeah, like he's shown that he can be that guy. I think it feels like it's almost like a mental confidence thing in throwing the ball because he hasn't had those good weapons to throw to. When like in Ohio State, he was like, yeah, when I throw the ball, the guy's going to catch it. Even if he's not open, like he's going to be open more not often than not, throwing without anticipation to hit him because it's like, dude, yeah, I'm throwing at Jackson Smith and Jigba going against the third corner. He's going to be open. He hasn't had that luxury in Chicago, but now with a couple new weapons, I really think that we could see that next step up from Fields. But once again, this is one of the things where he's the biggest wild card on this team for a reason. I can't tell you he's going to be great. He's got to be the one to tell you he's going to be great, you know? And then as my 11th seed, I have the New Orleans Saints, finishing once again with a 7-10 record, which the more and more I think about it, the less and less I feel confident in this. Like the Saints do have a really good roster on paper. Starting off on the defensive side, talking about their back seven, so like their linebackers and corners, safeties, that whole group. I mean, Demario Davis has been one of the best linebackers throughout his entire career, especially since his time in New Orleans. Even if people don't talk about him as much, I think he is getting more and more of that national recognition. But you got Pete Werner next to him too, who's been an ascending young player who I believe in coming out of Ohio State a couple seasons ago. And then I still think their secondary is one of the best in the league, despite there definitely being some question marks you want to see step up. You got Marshawn Lattimore, who is a true number one type of corner. He has been throughout his entire career. Like, the thing with corners is they're going to get beat. Like, that's just the nature of playing the position. This is an offensive league. But Lattimore is one of the more talented guys who will win more often than the other guys. And I think he doesn't get that recognition as much because there's so many good corners in the league. I mean, so many good ones, yes, but are there any great ones? Like, it's other than, like, there are great ones. I don't know what I'm trying to say right now. But, like, I think you guys understand what I'm saying. Like, the corner is one of the hardest positions to play, that it's the easiest one where if you make one mistake, then you, like, could give up a 70-yard touchdown. Not many other positions are quite like that, and I think Lattimore is still one of the top guys in the league. Alontae Taylor, he was picked in the second round last year. Adebo was, I want to say 2 or 3 years ago, in the third round. A couple of young guys to play on the outside or inside, and then you got Bradley Roby, who has just been like the definition of a solid number two, like someone who you do want to upgrade upon. Hopefully, Alontae Taylor, possibly Adebo, they can do that with, but if you can't, I mean, you could do a lot worse for playing there. And then for their safeties, Tyrann Mathieu, Marcus May, like that's Tyrann Mathieu. He's still one of the smartest safeties in the league. He's getting up there in age, starting to lose a step a little bit, and he's always been a risk taker where he does get beat a bit more often than you'd like to see for a safety, but he also plays closer in the box. He plays slot. He plays like underneath stuff that allows him to be this do-it-all piece. That's still like, yeah, he's still like a top tier guy. Like maybe not top tier, maybe like a second tier guy, but like someone who you definitely would want as one of your starting safeties. And Marcus May is kind of like the safer guy. Coming over from the Jets a few years ago, him and Jamal Adams were a dynamic duo. Jamal Adams definitely looked like the better one, but then when they separated, Marcus May started getting more and more recognition for really being the glue piece there. And I mean, you saw Jamal Adams kind of fall apart in Seattle. They swap out Marcus Williams for a bit cheaper option in Marcus May because, you know, the Saints are always trying to stay under that cap book with like all the manipulation and stuff they do. They got to make a couple moves like that. But that's not to say Marcus May isn't a good player. I mean, he's a great player, someone who helps this be one of the best back units in the whole league. But what could really hold them back is this defensive line. They're really going with a youth movement here. Like right now, their starters are listed as Nathan Shepard and Kalen Sanders. You hope Brian Brzee, the rookie out of Clemson, can take that job, but he's a risky prospect. Like, yeah, he showed all that promise like a few years ago, and then he went through a lot. Like his sister lost her life, like a very sad thing that he had to go through like right before the season. But that definitely affected his play. And is he going to be one of these top caliber guys? Like, you hope so, but he's not even a starter for them right now. On the edge, you have a ascending Cameron Jordan, looking worse and worse each year. Like, I don't think he's the player he once was. It's like maybe like he's kind of like Chandler Jones, you know, like, okay, like, sure, you'll take him as your second player, but like, do you really want him as your number one edge rusher, which he is right now? Carl Granderson, opposite of him, someone who you want as your like third, fourth guy. You're hoping that Peyton Turner, who you picked in the first round a few years ago, or Isaiah Foskey, a second round pick this year, can really take one or both of those starting roles, because it doesn't matter if your back end's really good. If you give the opposing quarterback 6 seconds to throw the ball, they're going to find an open man. And then the biggest wild card I have for this team is Derek Carr. I guess you can kind of lump that in with Michael Thomas, but Carr was bad last year. Like, there's no way around it. But was it him not vibing with Josh McDaniels? Like, that just seemed like a terrible matchup right from the beginning, because what we've seen from Carr in the past is pretty consistently top 12-ish quarterback play, like never more than 8, other than that one 2016 magical season he had. But like, he's always been like a good quarterback, not a great quarterback, and one that makes too many mistakes for you to feel comfortable with winning with. But also, he was on the Raiders, which were just always been a complete mess since he's been on it, and he tried his best to elevate it, but it just like, I don't think anyone would be able to elevate what's going on in Vegas, you know? So if we can get that top 12 caliber Carr, maybe even top 8, this team could definitely, will be better than top 10. You got some great receivers, or 7 and 10. You got great receivers to throw to, and Chris Olave, Michael Thomas, Rashid Shaheed, like those. There's a lot of questions with it, with Shaheed being a young guy. I mean, obviously Olave, first round pick last year, but I don't think anyone's questioning what he can be. And Michael Thomas, he could re-break out this year. I really think Michael Thomas is going to be Carr's number one guy. He obviously doesn't play the game the exact same way as Crabtree, but he likes that older possession type vet, like you saw with Cooper and Crabtree. I think Olave could have an Amari Cooper type year, where some games he's like popping off, some games he's just like, okay, where the heck is he? And I think that's due to Carr. But like, I mean, if it leads to them winning games, it leads to them winning games. This offensive line is fine. Like, you're really hoping Trevor Penning steps it up in year 2, but overall, like, you got a bunch of guys who, like, the Saints always seem to just pump out a solid offensive line. You're obviously concerned that running game's going to be a bit worse with Kamara missing the first couple of games, so it's only a 3-week suspension. If Carr is able to turn back into what he can be, this team is going to be a lot better than 7 and 10. The only thing I will say about Carr is, though, he always seems to struggle a bit more in year 1 of his system, and then year 2 is when he really turns it on. We'll see if he can do it better, like if that was just like a Raiders thing, or if that was like maybe the offensive he was running there was a bit more harder for him to comprehend and fully grasp. And here in New Orleans, he's going to be able to get it faster. And like, I mean, he is an older veteran now. He should be able to understand an offense faster than he was when he was younger. But yeah, like maybe this year isn't the year. That's kind of obviously what I'm predicting, that this year isn't the year the Saints go off. But next year, watch out. Year 2 of Carr in that system, with a good offensive line, good pass catchers, hopefully a better defense too. Like, this team has some serious upside that's a lot higher than the 7 and 10 ranking that I'm giving them. And then at the 10 seed, I have the Seattle Seahawks, which is going to be one of my more controversial opinions, but also one that I'm feeling pretty good about, honestly. Like, I hate to say it, but I'm just not as in on this team as other people are. They finished last year 9 and 8, and I think this year they're going to kind of regress a bit more to 7 and 10. Before I talk about their strengths, weakness, and wild card, I want to just say Geno Smith had such an incredible season last year. Like, what he was able to do to re-spark his career, earn that big-time contract, was, like, wonderful for him. But was he really all that good? Like, or was he just better than what we were expecting, throwing to some really good receivers and having an offensive line that was a lot better than we expected, at least early on, like down the season? That offensive line wasn't playing as good as it was at the beginning. But, like, if you just look at how the season went for him last year, after week 11 when they played the Raiders in an overtime game that they lost. They put up 34 points, had a good performance. They didn't score more than 30 points the rest of the year, including in a playoff loss where they lost 23-41 to San Francisco. They put up under 20 points in 3 of those 6 weeks. 7 weeks if you count the playoffs. And he really just felt like, I don't want to say the Geno that we thought he was going to be because he was better than that, but he just felt like kind of like your average starter. Like he was a good player being elevated by great playmakers and an offensive line and Kenneth Walker and like all these pieces around him. And yeah, maybe Geno just shuts me up once again. I do believe that he had some of the best games of the year last year. Like, oh my gosh, watching that New Orleans Seahawks game, like those throws he was making to Lockett were just unreal, and he had those all throughout the season. But it was the consistency of it that wasn't quite there, left a little bit more on the plate to be desired, that I think that people aren't just talking about enough. But enough of the Geno talk. Let's talk about the biggest strengths, which I have as this wide receiver trio. I mean, like DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, Jackson Smith, and Jigba. You aren't going to find too many better trios, and the only reason why they aren't number one is we haven't seen Jackson Smith and Jigba play in the NFL. If he plays like he did in college, like this is going to be the best trio in the league, and that's going to help Geno Smith play like a top 10 quarterback, which I'm not saying he can't. I'm just saying he wasn't a top 10 quarterback last year, and he was an incredible player, really exciting, but he needs these guys to lift him up, and I think that they can, but are they going to? I'm not going to predict it. I'm sorry. Let's move on to their biggest weakness. What I really think could hold this team back is their edge rushing room and, their whole defensive line in general, but specifically their edge rushers. They lost Shelby Harris, which I'm surprised they didn't bring back. He was part of the Russell Wilson trade, and he's been one of the better interior pass rushers in the league since his time in Denver. But for whatever reason, they were like, "Nah, we're good. We can roll with Jaron Reed and Brian Moan and Cameron Young." Like Jaron Reed's good, but these other guys, okay, who? And then along the edge, you just got a bunch of young guys that you're kind of relying on. Uchenna Nwosu, he's a fun player, solid number 2, number 3 type, kind of like one of these hybrid off-ball, on-ball linebackers, but definitely not the best number 1, And then a bunch of former second-round picks, and Boye Mafe, Darrell Taylor, and then Derek Hall picked in the second round this year. None of them have hit their upside yet. Obviously, Derek Hall hasn't. He's a rookie. But Boye Mafe was kind of disappointing as a second-round pick last year. Darrell Taylor started to break out a tiny bit. We'll see if he can continue to build off that and play into this next season. But, yeah, they're going to need some help from these young guys. And maybe this edge room can take themselves off of being the biggest weakness. But I think this interior room just doesn't really have the guys to get it done. And going against the Niners, I think that's going to be big problem for them. How the Niners love to run the ball. And then I have their biggest wild card as their secondary overall, both corners and at safety. So right now I'm putting them in the tier 2 because I believe in them more than I think that they have the pieces there. They just kind of got to be this, we are good. They should be good. I think they're going to be good. Reek Woolen, I don't know, I guess he's going by Reek now. It was a phenomenal pick for them last year in the 5th round. I remember when I first started hearing about him in the pre-draft process, oh yeah, this converted wide receiver out of UTSA, he's going to be really fast, and he's 6'4", 240. When it goes out there, runs a 4.29 or whatever it was. He's showing every single time, in the Senior Bowl, he was showing flashes, showing that he can cover these top guys, even though he came from the smaller school and just switched over from wide receiver. He's maybe he takes a bit of a step down this year. The turnover luck doesn't quite go his way, but at the same time, he no longer has to be this team's number 1 because that's what Devon Witherspoon's going to be. I mean, he's a top 5 pick. He's the 5th pick out of Illinois, and just an absolute lockdown corner that's going to be able to play inside, outside, whatever they need him. He's going to be the type of guy who's able to follow around their number 1 receiver. He's going to allow them to play a lot of man coverage and really just take away what the other team wants them to do. But he's also a first-round pick, or he's a rookie. So, you can't just guarantee he's going to do that. Like, yeah, I think he's going to do that. And we saw some success last year with, I mean, some success is very understating it with Tariq Woolen and Sauce Gardner. Like, these rookies can come in and produce, but sometimes you're going to get a Derek Stingley who might take a year or two. I mean, obviously we have to see if Derek Stingley's going to produce, but you know what I'm saying? Like, not every rookie comes in and is instantly him. Then you got Michael Jackson, who was actually like a really solid corner for them last year, playing on the outside. I think that when they go into nickel packages, they'll probably move Devon into the slot and have Jackson on the outside. Kobe Bryant, he's been playing some slot for them. I think he was a good 4th-round pick last year. Like, he's a bit more what you expect out of a day 3 pick than Tariq Woolen. Someone who shows flashes when he starts, but still has some to work on in his game. We'll see if moving him over to safety helps out. But speaking of their safeties, I think they have a really solid room overall. I think Jamal Adams has been one of these other guys who was so overrated before that now he's underrated because everyone's calling him overrated. He's got to play. That's the problem because he's been injured and looks like he's going to be injured to start the season once again. But Quandre Diggs is a solid free safety to go opposite to pair with him, keep a cap on the defense, and he knows when to take risks. He's going to get beat from time to time, but you can do a lot worse than Quandre Diggs. And then Julian Love was a really sneaky pickup, a do-it-all safety coming over from the Giants who, like, when they go into these 3 safety packages, because I think either Jamal Adams or Kobe Bryant, they're going to want to start over Julian Love. But in these 3 safety packages, Julian Love is going to be like the perfect 3rd guy. But I still think it's a pretty big wild card for the safety room because if Jamal Adams is back, that just really elevates what this unit can be and could make this whole secondary a tier 1 type secondary instead of a tier 2, especially if like Devon Witherspoon and some of all these, they just have so much youth. And the question mark of Jamal Adams here is like, man, I could really see this being like one of the best secondaries. And if that happens and some of the youth steps up on the interior, or on the defensive line, and then you got Geno Smith playing top 12-ish quarterback level, throwing to the best receiver trio in the league, like, it could work out. And they could make me look ridiculous for picking them to go 7-10. But, you know, you got to be higher, you got to be lower on some teams. And sadly, Seahawks fans, I am lower on the Seahawks. Then at my 9 seed, once again, a team I think is going to piss off a lot of people saying this low. I have the Detroit Lions, 8-9 last year. I think they're going to once again go 8-9. I'm going to go in order again instead of going out of order like I did with the Seahawks. First, let's talk about their strengths. The biggest one being this offensive line. I think this is the 2nd best offensive line in the league, definitely with the potential of being the best. Taylor Decker is a good tackle. Is he great? I don't know. But throughout his career, he's been someone you can depend upon just protecting your blind side. Jonah Jackson, he's been good. Like, he's definitely left a bit to be desired, especially in the pass blocking department. But overall, a solid left guard, like someone who was a 3rd-round pick a few years ago, and you hoped would develop into more, but you haven't quite seen it. But you're like, okay, like if he's your weakest link, then yeah, you can live with that. Frank Ragnow as center, yeah, he's a top 3 center in the league. Like when Jason Kelce retires, he'll probably be top 2. Corey Linsley up there too, but like obviously the other guy, Creed Humphrey, you have 0 complaints about him being your starter. At right guard, it looks like it's a competition between Graham Glasnow and Hal Vaitai. Glasnow was kind of disappointing. I mean, really disappointing, obviously, when he went over to Denver. But maybe returning back to Detroit is all he needs, and he can return to that top-tier guard. If not, Vaitai's been a good, if not injury-prone player for both the Eagles and the Lions. And then Penei Sewell has just been a stud at right tackle since he's come into the league. Like, this offensive line is what I expect from a Dan Campbell coach team. Just absolute maulers who are going to kick your ass and take names. You know, like, this is a team that wanted their identity to be built in the trenches, and I think that they very much so succeeded on that on the offensive side of the football. However, they are missing some of that finesse that you need to be a great football team, in my opinion. I have their biggest weakness as their pass catchers, both receivers, tight ends. And I feel like this is a little unfair because you can see the potential. Sam Laporta is a 2nd-round pick rookie. Tight ends just a lot of the times don't really hit as rookies, but you don't want to just assume he's not going to hit. Like right now, I'm not putting him as a top-tier tight end, but he's an Iowa tight end. Dude, how often do you see these guys succeed? Like every year, it seems like whoever the tight end in Iowa is becomes a good NFL player. And then at receiver, they have one of the best receivers in the league, and Amon-Ra St. Brown. But outside of that, it's really just a bunch of guys. Like Marvin Jones is getting up there in age and still like a solid player, but like as your second best receiver, or I don't know. Josh Reynolds is a good speed threat, but like he's someone who you want as one of these 3, 4th guys. Same with Khalif Raymond, and then a 7th round pick, Antoine Green, made the roster. This unit could really be elevated by Jameson Williams, and if you throw Jameson Williams into this mix, then okay, I'm liking this offense a lot more, and honestly, I probably think they make the playoffs if they have Jameson Williams, at least what Jameson Williams could be. I thought he was the best receiver in that draft class. His speed, his route running, maybe it's the Raider fan in me, the ghost of Al Davis haunting me, but speed does change the game and helps unlock everything else. And when you have a player like Amon-Ra St. Brown and then Sam Laporta as like really good underneath threats, you have Jahmyr Gibbs, who you hope to be like this like gadget type guy. David Montgomery's a good short area back. You have all these great, like not even good, but great underneath threats. Get that guy to take the top off the defense, and like that could be absolutely game changing. But without that, then it's like, okay, like just play short coverage. It's Jared Goff. You're going to be able to pick him off a couple times. That's why I put Gibbs and Williams as this team's biggest wild card, because I think, starting off obviously with Williams, I was just talking about, he could just make this one of the best passing attacks in the league. But Gibbs, like, I don't really know what to expect from him. They're saying they're going to use him in a way we haven't seen before, with like a running back, or like an unexpected way. I mean, they spent the 12th overall pick on him, and they looked absolutely ecstatic to get him. So maybe he's going to be one of these phenomenal running backs right off the gates. And, like, that wouldn't be surprising. Running backs typically hit the ground running, and Gibbs was, number 12 overall pick out of Alabama. Yeah, he was one of the best in the entire nation. So if anyone can do it, it's him. But really, like, is that going to be enough to elevate this offense? And with the defense on the other side, I think is going to be mid, to put it most accurately. I think I don't think they're going to be a killer defense with like a bunch of like good guys. Like Aiden Hutchinson could really be an elite pass rusher. Ali McNeil in the middle. James Houston, the young guy, young rookie last year, who just had an absurd amount of sacks for how little he played. They just drafted Jack Campbell to be the captain of the defense in the middle. Some young exciting players in the secondary, like Kirby Joseph and Brian Branch, as well as a lot of veterans that they just brought in this season: Emmanuel Mosley, Cameron Sutton, C.J. Johnson. There's a lot of turnover on the roster, but a lot of successful turnover, I believe it can be. But this also isn't something you always see in year one, all these guys coming together and perfectly fitting. So I think you're going to see some growing pains. And with the lack of Jameson Williams, that's why I think this team might get off to a slow start and might not be able to recover in what might not be the best division, but I think it's going to be a very competitive division. Speaking of the NFC North, though, I don't know who's this going to piss off the most, with me putting the 8th seed as the Minnesota Vikings, which, do the math on who you think I'm going to figure as the NFC North winner. Last year, the Vikings went 13-4, and I think they're due for some serious regression, going back down to 8-9. This was a team that really overachieved last year, and we saw that in the playoffs, getting beat by a Giants team that a lot of people thought also overachieved, and we kind of saw that when they got absolutely steamrolled by the Eagles. I just want to say that the Vikings can't be a good team, and once again, like, 8-9. Spoiler alert: I think the Packers are going to go 9-8. Like, this is going to be a very competitive division, with everyone going from 7-10 to 9-8. In my predictions, the difference between first and last is 2 wins. And some things that can get them some more wins are, first off, this wide receiver core. Like, first off, like, I don't need to say anything about Justin Jefferson. You know him, you love him. He's the best in the league. Either him or Devonta Adams, but like, Adams is getting up there in age. Justin Jefferson definitely could have that crown right now. And then, as you might have noticed, I only have them in tier 2. Like, oh, but you have the best receiver. Yeah, we just don't know the rest of it. I guess not the rest of it, just Jordan Addison. He was the Bilinkentoff winner. I think that's how you say it. Winner 2 years ago in college, and yeah, he was the best receiver in the league when he played, or in the nation when he played for Pitt, and then goes over to USC and plays with Caleb Williams and has another good season. But he just might not have had the athletic upside. But like as a number 2 receiver, hell yeah, take him. Like yeah, he's a bit smaller, a bit slower, but all the attention in the world is going to be going to Justin Jefferson. And if not him, like you also got TJ Hawkinson at tight end. And now you got Jordan Addison there as the third target on the team. Like, hell yeah. KJ Osborne, also a really solid slot player. Like, not much depth after that. But so you really hope these guys stay healthy. But you got 3 guys who can be real winners. I mean, Justin Jefferson, obviously best in the league. Jordan Addison, I think he's going to be one of these Devonta Smith, what's his name, T. Higgins, Jalen Waddle type of players where like, man, he could be like a number 1 receiver if he had the option, you know, but playing next to Jefferson, he's just not going to get that opportunity. And I mean, that's probably what's best for his career. Like being one of the best number 2 receivers ain't a bad gig, you know what I'm saying? But then you look at the people who are supposed to be guarding the wide receivers and you're like, that's some reason for concern for sure. Not to say that like it's 100% not going to work out because they have young talent there. I mean, right now it's supposed to be rookie Mekhi Blackman and second-year player Caleb Evans starting on the outside with Andrew Booth not able to grab that starting gig, which is concerning. I think I've got to say it's because of injury, right? Like, he was really good at Clemson, someone who I thought was worthy of being in the first round, but just had these injury concerns, started off the season or his career injured, and you know, sometimes that can suck the talent out. You know, if you aren't as fast or not as agile, can't like stop and go quite as quick. Like if just you lose like 1 or 2 steps at corner, you just can't be that elite guy. But that being said, like yeah, while you got young guys who you could be excited about, it's a former 4th round pick, a former 3rd round pick, and then Byron Murphy starting in the nickel. Like that, more often than not, when you roll into a unit that looks like or roll into the season with a unit that looks like that with so much youth and question, there's going to be more disappointment than there is fulfillment, you know? And with so many other, like, you can't just go around projecting the upside of every single team. And sadly, I think that this is one of the teams or one of the units that will not hit their upside. One thing that will help them hit that upside, though, is if this edge room can just please, for the love of God, stay healthy. Like they decided to replace Darius Smith with Marcus Davenport, who is definite downgrade and definite same injury question marks. But he is younger, so we'll have to see. He's been productive when he has been on the field for New Orleans. It's just that he never plays more than like 400 or 500 snaps. He's always injured. He's rotating. They don't have the best depth here with Pat Jones and DJ Wanham. But if Davenport and then Danielle Hunter on the other side are able to stay healthy, like this is going to be a tier 1 edge rushing room, you know? Danielle Hunter's he is what people want Trayvon Walker to be. I mean, not quite, because you also want him to be healthy, but like he's that physical ball of clay that just had all the strength, size, speed that you could ever want in an edge rusher, but none of the production in college. And he's been able to show like, hey, like if you refine your craft and really work hard, you can be one of the best players. And so far he has been, but maybe on the flip side of that, because he is such this crazy athlete, his body just can't seem to stay on the field for a whole season. If he is able to, that's going to help out this entire unit, especially the secondary. Like, if you got a bunch of young guys only having to cover for like 2 to 3 seconds, that's going to be a lot better than having to cover for 4, 5, 6 seconds and get torn to shreds. So as my first wild card, or last wild card, depending on which way you want to look at it, I have the 7-seed Carolina Panthers, led by rookie quarterback Bryce Young. Last year they went 7-10, but made that trade to go from 9-1, and I think it's going to pay off right away in year 1, leading to a 9-8 record. I have their biggest strength as Bryce Young, already putting him in that tier 3 franchise type of quarterback. I mean, other than being 5'2", 111 pounds, exaggeration, he's everything you want out of a franchise quarterback. He's got this escapability and pocket presence that is kind of like that if you don't have it, you aren't going to get it. That's something you can't teach, that instinct to know when to bail, when to use your legs, when to extend, when someone's coming, like bearing down on you. You understanding the blitz packages being thrown at you. Like, obviously, it's just going to get harder in the NFL. And maybe this is something where I look dumb in year one, and he looks like it takes a year or two for him to fully grasp the NFL offense. But I mean, if he's able to do it at Alabama, I think he's going to be able to do it in the NFL too. Like, Alabama's some of the toughest competition you're going to go against there. And the only problem is, though, he's throwing to a group of receivers and tight ends that you just can't really expect too much out of year one. I really wanted them to get a DeAndre Hopkins. Like, I thought that would have been the perfect thing for Bryce Young, a veteran who's just going to be open more often than not, he can really put his trust into. But the guy they decided to go for in that role is Adam Thielen, who isn't a bad player, and he's definitely, like, it's good that he's got all the knowledge of being in the league for however many years, and that's going to help out Bryce Young, but he's definitely on the downswing of his career. And then the other starters you have, luckily Jonathan Mingo looks like he's going to start, the second-round pick out of Ole Miss. He could definitely develop into a number one type receiver, but it's hard to just say he will be that from year one. And then DJ Chark, who's had such a up-and-down career with Jacksonville and Detroit so far, but theoretically he is a good ball winner, stretch vertical guy. You got Terrace Marshall Jr. too, out of LSU a couple of years ago, who a lot of people wanted to see starting this year, but it looks like he got beat out by Mingo and Chark. And when that's happening, it's like, okay, that's either a really good thing or a really bad thing. And then at tight end that you're throwing into Hayden Hurst, who's been just like a guy. Like, someone's going to have Hayden Hurst as a starter, and that's not a bad thing. Like, he is one of the 32 best tight ends in the league. Probably, I guess I do have a list. I can just say exactly what. Yeah, I have him as the 26th tight end in the league, at least tight end a room, with him, Ian Thomas, and Tommy Tremble. Like, he's a fine guy, but someone who's, like, he's in my tier 5 unexciting tier. Like, yeah, like, he's going to move the chain. He's going to be a decent red zone threat, but not someone who's going to elevate the offense from the tight end position, which we are seeing more and more of. The biggest wild card I have on this season is Frank Reich, their new head coach. He really looked like in Indianapolis one of the best head coaches in the league right off the bat. It looked like Indy got lucky that Josh McDaniels flanked on them, and Reich was like, yeah, I'll take the job. And then just everything fell apart last year. Offensive line was worse. Matt Ryan couldn't throw the ball and, like, just looking like a shell of himself. Eventually they just, like, booted him out the window, which, like, I don't know if that was his fault that everything sucked. I mean, I guess he's the head coach, so you got to put some of the blame on him, but I'm glad he's getting a second chance here in Carolina. You probably also noticed that I did not talk about the defense at all with them, because I feel like we kind of know what we're going to get. They're a young ascending defense coached by Jero Evero coming over from the Broncos. They got some good pass rushers, Brian Burns, Justin Houston. That's going to be a good room. Shaq Thompson and Frankie Louvu at the linebacker position. J.C. Horn's one of the best young corners in the league. Like, people are trying to put him above Pat Surtain because, like, obviously they're going to be compared being taken 8th and 9th overall in the same draft. He's not Pat Surtain, but he is still a good number one corner. And pair that with Dante Jackson, like, yeah, you're going to have a good secondary with Chin on the backside too. Jeremy Chin, the safety. And then Von Bell and Xavier Woods, Eric Rowe. Like, they've got all the pieces to be a solid defense. Do I think they're going to be like a top 10 unit? Possibly. I'd probably rank them more somewhere from that 10 to 15 range. But, I mean, Evero was able to elevate the Broncos, in my opinion, last year. So, yeah, like, that's why I think this team's got definite potential to make a playoff push, is they might have a lot of questions on the offensive side, but I'm feeling a lot more confident that those questions are going to turn into positive answers, the negative ones. And then on the defense, I think we're just going to get a really solid team that will help this young quarterback by, like, keeping them in games and letting him be like, okay, like, yeah, you made a mistake, but we got you. We bailed you out. We held them to a field goal after you threw a pick in your own territory, sort of deal. So as my 6th seed team, I have the New York Giants, improving half a game, going from 9-7-1 to 9-8. And yeah, this is a really exciting team that's definitely on the upswing. Maybe they aren't quite Super Bowl contenders. Everyone and their mother was saying that they overachieved last year, and maybe they did, but it's also because this coaching was just incredible, starting with Brian Dable and his offensive design, giving the keys to Mike Kafka to call the plays. But he was like, I mean, he's still the play designer. He's still the overseer of the entire offense, and really did like a phenomenal job getting the most out of Daniel Jones, Saquon Barkley, and this poor group of receivers and offensive line. Like, yeah, let's say it how it is. It wasn't the best, but they still managed to get it done. And like, credit to Wink Martindale and this defense too. Once again, not one of the best, but really opportunistic with their blitzes and turnovers, allowing this team to stay in and win a lot more close games than a lot of people thought they had any right to. If they want to repeat that again, though, they're going to definitely need some more help from their secondary than what it is looking like they are going to get on paper. I see the potential of the secondary, but when you're starting two rookies in Deonte Banks out of Maryland, who should be phenomenal, and then Trey Hawkins, 6th-round pick, it's just going to be a little bit concerning, you know? Like, when was the last time a team started two corners and made the playoffs? That wasn't Seattle last year, but two outside corners, you know? Like, Adoree Jackson looks like he's being kicked into the slot, which I've always thought was where he more so belonged. Like, the secondary has definitely this, the tier 4 actually I have as I see the promise, but let's see it first, because every tier 4 corner room here, the Chiefs, Raiders, Texans, Giants, and Bears, I see how they can be good, but, you know, like, you can make an argument for any of those guys that I just listed in that tier to be better or worse than the Giants, and I'd be like, yeah, like, that could happen, but, you know, I see the promise, let's see it first sort of deal. Their biggest wild card I have as their receivers and tight end. Tight end I only included in this wild card because of health. If Darren Waller is healthy, him and Daniel Bellinger are probably going to be one of the best tight end duos in the league. And from what we've seen in the preseason so far, Daniel Jones loves him some Darren Waller. And then for the receiving core, I think I mentioned this on the Chiefs or the Patriots one of those ones back then. But the tier 5 I have for receivers are labeled actually pretty deep, just no alpha. And that's what we've got here. Isaiah Hodgins, a good former, I want to say 6th-round pick for the Bills, who's broke onto the scenes last year for the Giants. Darius Slayton, a solid deep threat. Paris Campbell, a speed guy who's been best in the slot when he's been healthy, but someone who can't stay healthy. Jalen Hyatt, hopefully the long-term replacement for Darius Slayton, but how long is that going to take for it to materialize? Wan'Dale Robinson, a gadget guy who was kind of disappointing as a rookie. And Sterling Shepard, one of the better slot receivers in the league, but someone who just can't stay healthy, someone you can't rely on as much, and I think this team's trying to phase out just because, sadly, he just seems to get injured every year. If Shepard's able to stay healthy and some of these young players take the next step, start to hit their upside, and with Brian Dable coaching, I think that they can be a lot better than this tier 5. Like, this could be a pretty decent passing attack. I wouldn't say like top 5-ish or anything, but like they could definitely make a push for top 12, top 10. And then at the 5 seed, I have the Dallas Cowboys. Last year, they finished 12-5. I think they do take a slight step back this year, despite mostly improving on paper. I think they're going to finish 11-6, still being the top wild card in the NFC, though. Their biggest strength, I mean, it's got to be edge rusher, right? First off, just Micah Parsons coming in, instantly looking like the second coming of Lawrence Taylor was incredible for them. I actually have the Cowboys edge rushing room as the number 1 in the whole league, mostly off the backs of him, but also DeMarcus Lawrence is no slouch either. He is getting up there in age, and maybe he's not the perennial defensive player of the year candidate that he once was, but for your number 2 edge rusher, like, he'd be a number 1 on a lot of teams still. And then Dorrance Armstrong as your number 3, like, he's come along here definitely in Dallas, improving year on year. Someone kind of like the Agbanya Onkwonkwo for the Browns, where if he got the chance to be a full-time starter, I think he would be able to do it. But sitting here in Dallas as the number 3 guy to give Parsons and Lawrence some rest, or let Parsons rush from different angles or drop back in coverage sometimes, the perfect guy. Then you got Sam Williams, a 2nd-round pick, who showed some flashes last year. We see how much he sees the field. And then Dante Fowler has just some like deep depth. Might not see the field a ton, but overall, like when you just got the top 3 that the Cowboys have, yeah, they're going to get hella pressure, especially with the coaching that they receive from Dan Quinn. But speaking of coaching, that's the one thing that I think can hold this team back. As I said, I think this team improved on paper, bringing in Stephon Gilmore and Mozzie Smith on the defense, as well as Brandon Cooks on the offense. This should be a really, really, really good team. And I think that they're just going to be a good team because Mike McCarthy hasn't shown the ability to have a really, really good team since he won the Super Bowl back with the Packers. Well, they also went on that 15-1 run, but lost in the playoffs. But yeah, I think McCarthy is a bit past his prime as a offensive coach and play caller. And so what he decided to do was move on from Kellen Moore, who I think is entering his prime and was one of the best play callers in the whole league last year. As you can see, I also have the offensive play calling as the biggest wild card because he's going to be the one calling the plays, but also with Brian Schottenheimer as the de facto offensive coordinator. We'll have to see if it works out because they have the talent there. And these guys are professionals who know way more about football than I know right now. Obviously one day I want to know more than them. That's why I'm getting into this industry. But right now they're the offensive geniuses, especially when you compare them to me. So it's hard to be man, what are you doing? But they want to run the ball even more, and they got rid of Zeke. Zeke wasn't the same Zeke, but still to go from one of the most run-heavy offenses, which with a really good running back duo, to still having a really good running back in Tony Pollard. Don't get me wrong, I'm excited to see what he does, but to fire Kellen Moore and be yeah, we didn't run the ball enough. I don't know, man. It's another one of these wait and sees with how the offensive play calling is going to go, because if it is even good offensive play calling, not great, not elite, not top end, I think the talent here could definitely win out. This is one of the most stacked rosters from top to bottom. For their offense, the only low ranked thing I have is their tight ends, which is once again one of the things you can overcome a poor tight end room. And then on defense, they have some questions at safety, linebacker, their interior. They drafted Mozzie Smith, so you hope that there's some improvement there. But overall, this team should be one that's pushing for the 1 seed, and I think they just aren't going to quite be at that level because of Mike McCarthy and this offensive player calling. So that brings us to our division winners, starting again just like in the AFC and the South with the Falcons. I have them improving from their 7-10 record last year to 9-8. And one of the biggest reasons is this rushing attack. Just overall, their running back offensive line, I think it's the perfect combination. Go look up Bijan Robinson highlights from Texas if you really want to know more about him. If you don't know who Bijan Robinson is by this point, just know he's probably going to be the best running back in the league this year. I'm willing to take it that far. Running backs typically hit their prime earlier than other positions due to the nature of just hey, if you're just a phenomenal athlete, you're going to succeed there. And that's what Bijan is. And it really depends also on you having a good O-line, which maybe they have some deficiencies in pass blocking, but as a run blocking offensive line, Chris Lindstrom's one of the best run blocking right guards in the league. Overall, one of the best right guards, but especially in the run game. And then Caleb McGarry at right tackle. Once again, one of these guys, is he the best pass protector? Maybe, maybe not. That could definitely hold this team back. But as a run blocker, especially next to Lindstrom, he's more than fine. And then they got Drew Dahlman, a second round or fourth round pick from a few seasons ago at center. Once again, you can kind of hide the weaknesses at center. I don't know if he's going to provide them with the best play. He opened that Matthew Bergeron, the rookie out of Syracuse. Yeah, Syracuse.
Here's what I found.
Siri wanted to tell me about Syracuse. But you're hoping that Matthew Bergeron out of Syracuse is able to step up. He went from these powerful, if not a bit slower tackles, now kicking into guard, and to play next to Jake Matthews, who is the vet of all vets. I feel like he was 30 years old 10 years ago, and was just someone you could rely upon, and he's just still been that, getting up there in age. But he's only 31, and even though I just said I feel like he's been 30 forever, he's not. He's kind of the Brandon Cook syndrome, who's I don't know, is Brandon Cooks 30 yet? I think he's still 29. If not, he just turned 30, which is absolutely ridiculous for me. But moving on to the biggest weakness I have as edge rusher. They really worked this offseason on wanting to improve their defense, and I think they did that everywhere except for at edge. They brought in Bud Dupree. He's fine. Do I want him on my team? Probably not, honestly, because I think he's paid more than what he plays at. But like for your second, third guy, it's fine. You just really hope that Arnold Ebiketie, therefore, can step up and be that true number one, which he showed some flashes of last year, but as a second round pick, is he going to be that? Lorenzo Carter, D'Angelo Malone, like these are just... Malone was a third round pick last year, so he didn't really do too much. And Carter has been like someone who's shown flashes for New York and then last year in Atlanta, but at some point, like flashes is really all you're getting from him. And when you want to like this, I think the Falcons are going to shock some people, obviously having them make the playoffs. And I think that they can be an even better team than this if their edge rush room could be better, because this is really something that's holding them back. And then another thing that has the potential to hold them back is Desmond Ridder, but I've got a feeling this offense really isn't going to let him hold them back. He might cause them to lose a couple more games than he should as a young quarterback still going through the growing pains, learning the speed of the NFL. And he's not like a crazy athlete with a big arm who makes like the best decisions. And like, I really think he's just going to be a mid-level quarterback throughout his career, but in an offense that's predicated on running the ball and playing good defense to help. I think Desmond Ridder is more than enough to win with, right? Like, I thought he was worth it to pick at the back end of the first round or in the second round or something like that. Like, I don't think he should have fallen all the way to the third round. And with Atlanta setting everything up around him and giving him big ball winners on the outside with Pitts and London, who you don't need to be the most accurate guy when your guy's 5 inches bigger than the quarter. Like, just go throw up a jump ball for him, put your offensive playmakers in a position to succeed, and he showed that he was able to do that in Cincinnati, and I think he's going to be able to do that here in Atlanta too. It is a little different because it's the NFL, so once again, one of these things that we just have to go out and see it. For the 3 seed, I see the Green Bay Packers finishing there, improving off of last year, going 8-9 and going up to 9-8 despite losing Aaron Rodgers. Which is definitely going to be a controversial opinion, but you know what? Like, I really believe in this youth movement that they've got going on, especially when you have this solid offensive line, which I think is going to be their biggest strength. Now, David Bakhtiari, who has struggled with injuries recently, but when he's been out there, he's still been a top 3-4 tackle in the entire league, and hopefully another year removed from his ACL injury and then his appendicitis, I think it was last year. He had something like that where it's just like a complete random medical thing that happened. Hopefully he can come in and come back to being that elite guy. You're moving Elton Jenkins back into guard. He kind of struggled a bit at tackle, but when he's been at guard, he's been an elite player. Josh Myers, second round pick from a few years ago, he's been like solid, like starter level at minimum, but definitely like year 3 is a time when a lot of players really start hitting their stride along the offensive line, and Myers has been good up to this point, so let's see if he can take that next step forward. Same with John Runyon, very similar actually, just picked in like, I want to say the 6th round, let me confirm that. Yeah, picked in the 6th round entering of 2020, so entering year 4 now. It's been a bit of a disappointment, but for the rest of this offensive line being as good as it is, you're allowed to have like an average player every once in a while, you know? And Zach Tom, a 4th round pick last year, who came in and instantly upgraded their tackle situation, which was kind of struggling with Elton Jenkins and Bakhtiari being out, Josh Neiman being just like an all-right player. Tom really looked like a steal of a pick last year, and I expect that to continue to be the case. The biggest thing that I can see holding this team back, though, is Joe Barry. It's always tough for me, though, whenever a team keeps their coordinator, kind of the same thing with Matt Canada. I'm like, oh, like, they didn't let Pickett call audible, so like in year 2, like it sounds like they are. So maybe the play calling is gonna get better. I think the same thing might be happening here in Green Bay because like, man, this defense was supposed to be elite and it was bad at times. Like, and it just like didn't make sense what they were doing, playing all this soft zone, off coverage, letting teams pick them apart because they were trying to like play conservative. And it's like, okay, but you got to be aggressive every once in a while. All teams are going to be like, yeah, like I'll take 8 yards every play underneath. Like I wish I could get 20 yards right now, but let's move the chains. And this team has like the potential to be really good. I still really like their secondary, actually having them ranked as the 3rd best in the entire league with Jair Alexander, Rasul Douglas, Eric Stokes, who will be missing some time due to injuries, but overall like a good unit. And then this pass rush headed by Rashawn Gary, Preston Smith, and rookie Lucas Van Ness should still be really good. If this coaching could be anything above a tier 6 coaching, I think this should be a good defense. And with this offense that I believe in, like obviously I have them as their biggest wild card, but that's why I think they're going to make the playoffs. Like I think people are kind of sleeping on how good this team is just because their coaching was so bad on defense last year, and they have so many questions on offense. But I mean, let's be honest, Jordan Love was this quarterback that we were all saying, oh, he needs to sit, he needs time to develop, he's got the talent, but like, is he going to be good? And he sat behind Aaron freaking Rodgers for 3 years. Like, if he can't be good, then yeah, he's just not good and probably wasn't worth the pick. I mean, obviously, it wouldn't be worth the pick if he's not good. But he's someone who I believe in, who could really, like, I have him in the tier 4 right now, but I think he can easily jump his way into being one of these superstar quarterbacks. Like, he's got the arm talent, the escapability, the mobility, and he's getting to grow up with this offensive core, which I just think is an incredibly smart strategy that may not pay dividends in year one. I might be overrating them in year one because I love what they're doing. But you got only first and second year players for him to throw the ball to, and Christian Watson, Romeo Dobbs, Jalen Reed, Samari Toure as their wide receiver room, that's what it's called. And then at tight end, Luke Musgrave, Tucker Kraft, like all of these guys are all in their first, second years. And if it works, then you got a young, cheap core to build around for the future. While, like, yeah, you will have to pay Jordan Love right away because he's already at the end of his rookie contract. But when everyone else is so young and cheap, like I really think this can work out for the Green Bay Packers, and I'm excited to see what they do this season. So at the 2 seed, I have the San Francisco Niners. Actually taking a bit of a step back, despite still being the second best team in the NFC, in my opinion, going from 13-4 to 11-6. This team had a crazy offseason with Trey Lance, Brock Purdy, all that drama, but I don't think it's really going to matter too much with Kyle Shanahan as the offensive coordinator, head coach, but like offensive play caller. He's really revolutionized the NFL and has been able to win, or at least put up good offensive numbers, no matter who's at quarterback for them. And he's shown that he can do it once again with Purdy, who seems to be the perfect operator of his offense. I'll just get into talking about them together, who, as you can see on the screen, Brock Purdy is my biggest wild card for this team. Because he just came out of nowhere and just suddenly was really good. He's an average athlete with an average arm coming out of Iowa State, who was like a 4-year starter there, and just like he showed flashes as a freshman, but it's like, okay, like he's probably not going to come into anything in the NFL, and was Mr. Irrelevant. My God, did he become relevant fast with Trey Lance and Jimmy G both getting hurt last year. Him coming in, not losing a single game until he was playing with a torn UCL against the Eagles in the NFC Championship game. Like, that's the only game he's lost in his career so far. That's insane. Yes, a lot of it is because Kyle Shanahan's here propping up this offense, giving him open reads and allowing him to play to his strengths. But I don't think that's should be a knock on Brock Purdy. You know, Kyle Shanahan found what his quarterback does best and was like, yeah, let's use that. Let's do it, and let's make him look better than people think he theoretically should be. But I mean, if he's playing great, he is great, sort of deal. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, maybe he wouldn't be great outside of the Shanahan scheme, but if he's in the Shanahan scheme and he's playing great, I don't see what they're complaining to be about with him. And if he's able to be anything close to what he was last year, then yeah, like the Niners somehow found their quarterback of the future. They do, though, need their offensive line to be decent at least. It was kind of bad last year, and they did nothing to make it better with now Colton McKivitz starting at right tackle for them. We'll see if he's able to do anything. Spencer Burford has been a disappointment for them. And then Aaron Banks, for a second-round pick, has been a disappointment. He's been a fine starting lineman. Once again, this is year 3, so maybe he can take that next step up. But yeah, he's definitely been not what you wanted out of a second-round pick. And Jake Brendel at center is fine. Trent Williams, though, like, just look up his highlights. He's so fun. He just, the way he absolutely destroys anyone. They started, the Niners call a lot of tackle pull plays to get him out in space, get him out moving, and I would hate to be like a linebacker or even worse, like a corner, you just see Trent Williams running full force at you, I would just be like, oh, lay down, like, just don't hurt me, sir, please. But yeah, he's one of the best tackles in the league, and he really is the only reason why this isn't the worst offensive line in the league right now. But even he's getting up there in age, has dealt with some injuries. Like, you're hoping he stays healthy. But yeah, like, this offensive line, if something's going to hold back this team, I think it's either going to be the offensive line or losing D'Amico Ryans. They were able to recover from Saleh, but like, that's also because they had Ryans there in the wings to still be a good defensive coordinator. They're bringing in Steve Wilkes, so he's obviously, look what he was able to do with Carolina last year. I don't really have any concerns about this defense taking a step back, but it is still a little bit of a no. Like, hey, like, I have them ranked as the number 2 defense in the league right now, but the coaching is going to take a step back, like, almost assuredly, because D'Amico Ryans are just that good. So we'll have to see. And then as the best team in the NFC, shocker, I have the Philadelphia Eagles. I mean, what isn't there to say about this team? They just are so stacked from top to bottom. I do have them losing a couple more games this year than last year, going 14-3 down to 12-5. I think it's just harder to predict a team only losing like a couple games, especially when like you're trying to predict so many teams to do good. Like, someone's obviously the best team that I have finishing are the Chiefs at 13 wins. I think 1 or 2 teams are actually going to end up hitting 13. It's just I didn't know where to take wins away from other teams. That team might hit 14 again this year. We'll see. But yeah, right now, I think the Eagles, like, it's more so the seeding that I think matters in these predictions than the actual record. But like, if you disagree, you can yell at me or whatever. Yeah. But let's get on to what makes the Eagles so good. And really, it's just their offense from top to bottom. Jalen Hurts has arrived. He has evolved as a quarterback where he's still like, I still have him in my tier 2, number 7th ranked quarterback overall, because he has shown, like, he has some weeks where it's like, oh, not everything's clicking on the offense, and he's not able to be the one to elevate the offense when the defense knows what's coming and is able to slow down his receivers, his run game, stuff like that. But it doesn't really matter if he's not able to do that, because he has the team around him that's able to help elevate him. And he elevates it back by being an amazing runner, a great decision maker, all that. But like, he doesn't need to be one of these tier 1 guys when he's throwing the ball to AJ Brown, Devonta Smith, Quez Watkins. They brought in Olamide Zaccheaus, who's been a really solid receiver for the Falcons over the past couple of years, and that's just going to help add some depth and insurance to this wide receiver core. And then you're throwing to Dallas Goedert, who's one of the best tight ends in this league. And we'll see if the play calling takes a step back with Steichen leaving, but you still have Nick Sirianni as the offensive coordinator and play callers. I still think that this offense is going to be one of the best in the entire league. I still have 3 position groups ranked as tier 1, with wide receiver as the 4th overall, tight ends as 5th, and their offensive line, I think, is the best in the league. Quarterback, as I already said, is the tier 2. Running back, tier 4. Running back is not as important. Sorry, guys. But they definitely have some upside there. Go Rashad Penny. The only thing I really see holding back this team in general is their safety room. I have it in the tier 5, which is the last tier I have for my safeties. It's just they got too many questions on it. Like, Reed Blankenship is someone who started coming along at the end of last season, and maybe he can be their starting safety of the future. But like, when you're putting your faith in a second-year undrafted free agent to be your starting free safety with a brand new defensive coordinator, like, I mean, maybe it can work out, but we'll have to see there. Terrell Edmonds in Pittsburgh has been disappointing for a first-round pick, but like, he's been a solid box options. But when you got like a solid player and then a rookie, or a second-year player, and then a rookie in Sidney Brown as the backup insurance option in case one of them goes down or it's disappointing, you're just like, okay, like, with everything else on this roster so loaded, this is going to be the one thing, or this is the most obvious thing to point out and be like, hey, like, this could be the thing holding them back. And the biggest wild card I have with this team is the Georgia defenders, because if they all play incredible, then it doesn't matter if you have a sack of potatoes out there covering the corners or covering the wide receivers. They drafted Jalen Carter and Nolan Smith in the first round, two phenomenal players. I mean, Jalen Carter was probably the best in the draft class. He did have his off-field concerns, but I'm hoping that's in the past, especially for him playing on this defensive line. He gets to join up with former teammates Jordan Davis, Nakobe Dean, who are expected to receive bigger roles in this defense this year, especially with the departure of Hargrave and Edwards. Yes. Yeah, but those guys stepping out, these guys were the ready in-house replacements for him, and I mean, I'm expecting them to play good. And yeah, I'm expecting them to come in and instantly like produce just like they did at Georgia, and just like that they've shown the potential to be. Like, there's a reason why this Georgia team went back-to-back national championships. But it is like, yeah, a wild card. We haven't seen them do it in the NFL, so yeah, that's just the thing that I feel like could most flip the switch of the season. But it's something that I'm like, yeah, I'd be kind of surprised if they were on the bad end of this wild card. All right, so that's going to do it for my regular season predictions. I'm going to upload a video either later today or tomorrow. It depends on how fast I get done editing it, and like I work another job too, so it's like balancing all those schedules. But going to post another video with my awards predictions and my playoff predictions, so make sure to stick around, look for that, hit that subscribe button, that like button, all that stuff. Like, help support me out if you like my content. If you don't like my content, go yell at me in the comments, because that helps the algorithm. And yeah, I hope you guys all have a great day. Enjoy the NFL season that's starting.